Chapter 1877, Repairing the Ancient Tripod. Chapter 1877, Repairing the Ancient Tripod. The speed of the ancient zither and flute was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared, leaving only corpses on the ground. Suzimo looked at the hundreds of Earth Immortal corpses in the vicinity and pondered for a moment before heading forward to collect the storage bags of the Earth Immortal experts. Although those Earth Immortals died, their storage bags still had their spirit consciousness imprints. Suzimo could not erase the imprints, nor could he see what was in the storage bags of the Earth Immortals. However, the storage bags of 100 Earth Immortals were not a small gain. Suzimo continued forward along the abyss. At that moment, the number of corpses in the abyss increased. It was as though an extremely tragic battle had happened here many years ago. Before long, the bronze square tripod in Suzimo's consciousness trembled slightly. Could there be some sentient dermic treasure in the vicinity? Suzimo's heart skipped a beat, and he began searching around. Before long, a sword hilt was indeed exposed between two corpses. Suzimo advanced and gripped the hilt of his sword, whipping it outwards. Clang! A sword was pulled out from the dust, and it let out a clear sword hum. Unfortunately, the sword was filled with cracks. Even if it was a sentient dermic treasure, it no longer had sentience and was clearly crippled. Suzimo's wrist trembled gently. Unable to withstand the power, the sword shattered into many shards and scattered on the ground. For most cultivators, those shard fragments were useless. However, for the bronze square tripod, even if it was a spirit treasure fragment, it could still refine and absorb it to repair the cracks on the tripod. Waving his sleeves, Suzimo put away the sword shards and threw them into the bronze square tripod. Indeed, an extremely terrifying heat burst forth from the tripod and began to refine the sword shards, absorbing the power within to repair the cracks. Of course, there were too many cracks on the tripod. Even after devouring those shards, only 2 or 3 cracks were repaired. It would still be a long time before the second tripod wall could be repaired completely. After devouring the spirit treasure fragments, a change happened on the first wall of the bronze square tripod as well. If Suzimo had not been paying attention to the changes in the bronze square tripod, he might not have noticed it either. The first wall of the bronze square tripod had long been repaired, but now, Suzimo caught a trace of life on the wall. Suzimo looked at the lifelike divine dragon etched on the outer wall of the bronze square tripod with its eyes closed in deep thought. Back then, because he devoured a spirit treasure fragment, the divine dragon on the outer wall opened its eyes and imparted to him a powerful secret skill of the dragon race. After imparting that secret skill, the divine dragon's eyes closed once more. There was no longer any activity on the wall of the tripod. Now that he sensed such a change, a guess flashed through Suzimo's mind. If there were enough sentient dermic treasures or spirit treasure fragments, would the divine dragon on the wall of the tripod awaken once more? What sort of changes would the awakened divine dragon bring to the bronze square tripod? Although Suzimo had obtained the bronze square tripod for a long time, up till now, he knew very little about it. He did not know the origin, grade, function, might, or divine powers of the tripod. Perhaps the secret of the ancient tripod could only be revealed after the bronze square tripod was completely repaired. Suzimo took a deep breath and continued forward. He was not fast and was extremely cautious. Before long, the bronze square tripod vibrated once more. Another sentient dermic treasure? Delighted, Suzimo searched the vicinity hurriedly. Before long, he found a damaged ancient bell beneath a corpse. Without hesitation, Suzimo threw the ancient bell into the bronze square tripod to have it devoured. A few more cracks on the second tripod wall were repaired. As Suzimo ventured deeper, he could find the sentient dermic treasures left behind from the battle among the corpses at intervals. Of course, after countless years, the storage bags of perfected immortal experts turned into ashes, and the many items and treasures within could not withstand the baptism of time and turned into dust. Only the sentient dermic treasures that were scattered in the abyss could be preserved till now. Of course, those sentient dermic treasures no longer had any sentience and were battered by time. Even so, those sentient dermic treasures were great supplements for the bronze square tripod. Suzimo was both surprised and delighted as he advanced. He was delighted because the second wall of the bronze square tripod was healing at a visible speed. The life force fluctuation on the first tripod wall intensified as well. Although the divine dragon etched on the walls of the tripod still had its eyes closed, it seemed like it could awaken at any moment. Along the way, Suzimo gradually realized that this abyss was an ancient battlefield. Back then, a massive battle must have happened for so many corpses and sentient dermic treasures to be scattered. This meant that many perfected immortal experts died in this battle back then. What shocked Suzimo was that he saw so many corpses of perfected immortal experts before he even reached the end of the abyss. If that was the case, what was at the end of the abyss? Could an existence stronger than a perfected immortal have died here in the battle back then? As time passed by, Suzimo was getting closer to the end of the abyss. In fact, he could sense a series of domineering energy fluctuations ahead. A huge battle seemed to have broken out at the end of the abyss. There was a high chance that many Heaven Immortal experts were fighting there. The man he saw riding on the Wyrm chariot earlier on, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, as well as the coquettish woman that even he was wary of. There was a high chance that all of those experts were gathered at the end of the abyss. Suzimo stopped in his tracks and frowned with a grim expression. His gains from this trip to the abyss were already unimaginable. Notwithstanding the storage bags of the Earth Immortals and Black Immortals, the spirit treasure fragments that were collected along the way and fed to the bronze square tripod were priceless. The second wall of the bronze square tripod was almost half repaired. Even if Suzimo were to withdraw now and leave the abyss, it would not be a wasted trip. If he continued deeper, his future would be uncertain and it would be way too dangerous. Given his current capabilities, there was no way he could protect himself. Any Heaven Immortal expert could probably kill him with a single finger. However, he was already here. If he were to retreat and not take a look at the end of the abyss, he would feel indignant. Suzimo did not know that the many Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals at the end of the abyss were experiencing an unimaginable calamity. Not many people could leave this calamity alive. Chapter 1878, Soul Summoning Banner. Chapter 1878, Soul Summoning Banner. In the abyss. Suzimo stood on the spot and pondered for a long time before deciding to continue forward. The main reason why he came this time round was to search for some opportunities. However, he also wanted to see what secrets were hidden in the abyss. Could the divine dragon on the bronze square tripod have led him to this star just for the spirit treasure fragments in the abyss? At that moment, the bronze square tripod heated up in his consciousness and emitted an excitement. Suzimo followed the edge of the abyss carefully and continued forward. He was tense and was prepared to escape immediately if he saw that the situation was amiss. At the end of the abyss, heaven and earth essence chi fluctuated violently, as though the battle was intense. The surrounding black fog became extremely thin in the aftershock. This sentient dermic treasure belongs to me. Anyone who dares harbor designs on it will be going against me, Luo Yang, and they will be killed without mercy. A murderous roar sounded from the end of the abyss. Before he saw that person, Suzimo's mind flashed with the image of the arrogant Heaven Immortal expert, riding on the Wyrm chariot. At that time, an Earth Immortal merely scanned him with his spirit consciousness and was killed. Hee. Right then, a chuckle sounded from the end of the abyss. A charming and gentle female voice sounded, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, you've just snatched a 7 Tribulations spirit treasure. You won't be able to handle this soul summoning banner as well? It's better to hand it over to me. 7 Tribulations spirit treasure? When Suzimo heard that, a doubt flashed through his mind. A spirit treasure was a sentient dermic treasure. However, what was the meaning of the 7 Tribulations attributed to it? Could it be that the grades of sentient dermic treasures were not divided into inferior, middle, superior, and supreme grades? That was not impossible. After all, a sentient dermic treasure meant that it had gained sentience. That was a qualitative leap. No matter what, one thing was certain. The so-called soul-summoning banner was definitely a treasure that was not weaker than the Seven Tribulations spirit treasure. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a fight between Heaven Immortal Luoyang and Meiji. Fellow Taoists. Another voice sounded. There aren't many intact spirit treasures in this ancient battlefield to begin with. Almost all of them were obtained by the two of you. Aren't you guys way too greedy? That's right. We can't return empty-handed either. An indignant commotion broke out. Why? You guys aren't convinced? Heaven Immortal Luoyang asked instead. Meiji chuckled. At most, we'll just continue fighting and see who can obtain this soul-summoning banner in the end. In that short period of time, Su Zimo had already arrived at the end of the abyss. Narrowing his gaze, he looked through the faint black fog. Dozens of figures stood in midair ahead. Every single figure was filled with an extremely terrifying aura, and the surrounding essence chi surged. Although the strength of the dozens of figures varied, they were all Heaven Immortal experts. Heaven Immortal Luoyang and Meiji were among them as well. At that moment, Heaven Immortal Luoyang was holding a pitch-black wooden banner that was about 3 feet long. It was unknown what material the banner was made of, but there seemed to be a pattern etched on it that could not be seen clearly. That pitch-black wooden banner should be the soul-summoning banner that Heaven Immortal Luoyang mentioned earlier on. At that moment, Heaven Immortal Luoyang was surrounded by dozens of Heaven Immortal experts. Meiji stood not far away and glared at him with a smile, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The battle was about to begin. There were more than 1,000 people scattered on the ground. Those 1,000 cultivators were not Black Immortals, but Earth Immortal experts. That was because the battlefield in midair was already occupied by dozens of Heaven Immortals. In order to avoid being implicated, the 1,000 Earth Immortals could only descend to the ground. Most of the Earth Immortal experts had the same thoughts. They wanted to see if they could obtain more opportunities and treasures at the end of the abyss. Any cultivator who could arrive here had already gained more or less. There were hundreds of corpses piled on the ground dripping with blood. It was clear that a huge battle had just broken out. Su Zimo took a rough look. Among the Earth Immortal experts, he saw a familiar face. It was the skinny Earth Immortal who snatched his jade dagger. However, he did not see the immortal couple. He did not know if they had already left or died in the abyss. At that moment, many Earth Immortals were focused on the dozens of Heaven Immortals in midair, and no one noticed Su Zimo's existence. Or rather, even if anyone saw Su Zimo, they would not take him seriously. Even the 1,000 Earth Immortals would die at the end of this abyss if they were careless, let alone a mere Black Immortal. Kill. Suddenly, a loud shout sounded in midair. The battle of the Heaven Immortals broke out once more. Incinerating firmament, boiling sea. Starfall. Heavenly slash. Supreme divine powers burst forth one after another. Instantly, the world changed and sand and rocks flew as the entire abyss shook violently. At the Heaven Essence realm, one could fuse Heaven and Earth Essence Chi into supreme divine powers and release them. The true might of a divine power could only be unleashed when Heaven and Earth Essence Chi was infused into it. Raging flames surged in midair, and the entire firmaments were burned red. The tsunami surged and bubbled continuously. It was completely boiling. Ancient stars descended from the skies one after another. This was no longer a phantom formed by divine powers. The stars had already materialized and descended with an unstoppable aura. A Heaven Immortal was struck by the ancient stars and could not withstand the terrifying power contained within. His body exploded instantly and fresh blood spread. However, before long, the Heaven Immortal released blood rebirth to reconstruct his body. Some of the Earth Immortal experts did not have such methods and could not dodge in time. They were struck by the stars and died on the spot. When those stars fell to the ground, they created gigantic pits. In the blink of an eye, the abyss was riddled with holes. The 1,000 Earth Immortals below dispersed and hid everywhere, afraid that they would be implicated by the aftershock of the Heaven Immortal expert. Su Zimo's face was a little pale as well as he retreated far away. On the battlefield in midair, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang indeed had the right to be arrogant. Even against the encirclement of dozens of Heaven Immortal experts, he could maintain his undefeated state and fight in all directions. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang would only be cautious if Mei Ji, who was lurking around the outer perimeter, attacked. Mei Ji was very smart. She did not fight Heaven Immortal Luo Yang head-on and merely wandered around the outer perimeter. Occasionally, she would attack and Luo Yangxian would defend with all his might in a flustered manner. At this rate, it would be difficult for Heaven Immortal Luo Yang to protect the soul-summoning banner in his hands. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly felt a sense of trepidation. A change happened on the battlefield. The pitch-black wooden banner in Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's hands suddenly trembled and released pitch-black lights that surged into the clouds. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was the first to be struck and was caught off guard. With a dull grunt, his palm exploded into a blood mist against the pitch-black lights. Chapter 1879, Awakening of the Godfiend. Chapter 1879, Awakening of the Godfiend. Outside the Dragon Abyss Star, a streak of light sped over and suddenly paused, revealing a figure. It was a young man in a white Taoist robe that was spotless. His body shone with a mysterious glow, and he emitted a terrifying aura. His gaze was burning as though it could penetrate the void and land on the abyss on the Dragon Abyss Star. Right now, pitch-black lights were bursting forth from the abyss, surging into the clouds. The young man's eyes shone brightly with a hint of joy as he said repeatedly, "Good, good, good. 9 tribulations pure yang. I didn't waste my time crossing the galaxy for this." With that said, the young man disappeared from the spot in a flash and sped towards the abyss. Not long after the young man disappeared, another golden light descended outside the Dragon Abyss Star. It was a gigantic golden ant that was comparable to a divine elephant. Its body was like molten steel and shone with a golden glow. Its eyes were ferocious and its aura was terrifying. On the back of the golden ant sat a man. The person wore golden battle armor as well and was almost one with the ant beneath him. He had golden hair and glared at the abyss on the Dragon Abyss Star. To think that it's a pure yang spirit treasure, the golden-armored man exclaimed softly with an excited expression. "Master, it seems like an expert has just left this place. The aura he left behind should not be weaker than yours." The gigantic golden ant suddenly spoke in human tongue. "Yes?" The golden-armored man nodded slightly. "I saw him. He should be Sword Immortal Yu Hua of Heaven and Earth Academy. This person is a little troublesome to deal with. Let's go." After pondering for a moment, a decisive look flashed through the golden-armored man's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "No matter what, a pure yang spirit treasure that has experienced the 9 tribulations can choose its master on its own. Nobody knows who this treasure will end up with just yet." With that said, the golden-armored man rode on the gigantic ant beneath him and charged towards the abyss of the Dragon Abyss Star as well. The moment the golden-armored man disappeared, another figure appeared outside the Dragon Abyss Star. To think that this small star would be so lively. That person spoke softly and was actually a woman. Her voice was extremely pleasant like a heavenly flute. The heaven and earth essence chi that filled the galaxy began to gather around the woman. Dragon Abyss Star, at the end of the abyss. Right in front of everyone, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's palm exploded and a blood mist spread, causing an uproar. Among the many cultivators present, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was almost the strongest existence and Mei Ji was probably the only one who could fight him head-on. However, to think that something would happen to the pitch-black banner and actually injure Heaven Immortal Luo Yang. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang shrieked and retreated without hesitation. For a Heaven Immortal expert, a shattered palm was not a fatal injury. However, what terrified Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was that his wound was shrouded by a mysterious power that blocked his regeneration. There was something strange about the soul-summoning banner. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's reaction was extremely fast, and he made a prompt decision. Without hesitation, he gave up on obtaining the soul-summoning banner and retreated. It was thanks to his timely reaction that his life was saved. Initially, the soul-summoning banner was only 3 feet long. It drooped and looked lifeless without any spirit. However, under the envelopment of the pitch-black light, the body of the soul-summoning banner expanded and rose to a height of 100 feet instantly. The gigantic cloth spread and the pattern on it appeared. On one side of the banner was a majestic figure that shone with a golden divine light. It was like a god that had descended and could not be ignored. On the other side of the banner, another burly figure was drawn. It had 2 horns on its head and black chi coiled around its body like a terrifying heavenly fiend. Golden divine lights and pitch-black fiend lights burst forth, illuminating the abyss in a sinister manner. The 100-feet-tall soul-summoning banner swayed in midair, as though someone was shaking the banner from beneath. The gigantic banner swept towards the surrounding Heaven Immortals. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's reaction was extremely fast, and he dodged it by a hair's breadth, avoiding the banner. However, among the dozens of Heaven Immortals that were initially surrounding him, a small portion of them reacted slower and were stunned for a moment before being sucked into the gigantic banner. The gigantic banner was like an ancient beast that devoured those Heaven Immortal experts. The soul-summoning banner swayed and fell, causing the Heaven Immortals to reappear before long. Initially, every single move of those Heaven Immortal experts could release a shocking power. However, in the blink of an eye, there was no longer any life left in the bodies of the Heaven Immortal experts sucked in by the soul-summoning banner. There were no injuries on the Heaven Immortal experts. However, when they fell from the banner, they were already dead, turning into withered corpses that smashed heavily onto the ground. Pissed, the remaining cultivators gasped and their faces turned pale. So many Heaven Immortals died without a single sound or any plausible reason. In fact, some of the Heaven Immortals were not even drawn in. They merely touched the gigantic banner and fell from midair, dying on the spot. It was as though the souls of those Heaven Immortals were sucked away by the soul-summoning banner. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's eyes widened in fear. If he was a step slower, he would have died here like those Heaven Immortal experts. His 9 WIRMS were not as lucky as him and were killed by the soul-summoning banner. The ancient war chariot fell to the ground and dimmed as well. What spirit treasure is that? It's so terrifying. A guess flashed through Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's mind. Could it be? Sensing that the situation was bad, Meiji had long fled far away and frowned. Run! The remaining Heaven Immortals shouted and fled in all directions. The Heaven Immortal experts realized that they could not defend against the power of the soul-summoning banner at all. The 100-feet-tall soul-summoning banner swayed like a flag, and the entire Dragon Abyss star shook continuously. 2 tall and burly figures crawled out from the 2 banners of the soul-summoning banner. Many cultivators were shocked. The 2 figures drawn on the banner had come to life. One of them shone with a divine light and descended from the skies like a divine being. It emitted an aura that surpassed the world and blocked the path of many Heaven Immortals. The heavenly god punched out. A few Heaven Immortals joined forces and released supreme divine powers, immortal arts and secret skills, but they were all destroyed by a single punch from the heavenly god. The other figure was the tall heavenly fiend with 2 horns drawn on the cloth. It blocked the other side of the abyss and roared, "All of you, die!" The massive body of the heavenly fiend seemed to block the other side of the abyss entirely, and no living being could cross. When the Godfiend on the soul-summoning banner awakened and attacked at the same time, all the cultivators were trapped within. Nobody could escape. Chapter 1880, Birth of the Azure Dragon. Chapter 1880, Birth of the Azure Dragon. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji had ugly expressions. Both of them were geniuses and realized what was going on when they saw that. There was a high chance that all the changes that happened this time round were caused by the soul-summoning banner. The birth of the dermic treasures was used to lure the cultivators and living beings here. The soul-summoning banner was sentient and should have two motives. One was to devour their souls, and the other was to choose a master. But now, the power of the soul-summoning banner was beyond their imagination. Even without anyone controlling it, the power of the soul-summoning banner alone was enough to kill them. Under normal circumstances, even if dermic treasures were sentient, the spirit consciousness contained within would not have a strong will or wisdom. However, it was the opposite for the soul-summoning banner. It was not hard to imagine that the previous owner of the soul-summoning banner must have been a peerless, ferocious being. The soul-summoning banner must have devoured countless souls in the past to be tainted by such a vicious and sinister aura. In fact, it even threw out bait and set up a trap to lure many cultivators over. Among the many cultivators that arrived, if there was anyone with outstanding talent and powerful combat strength, the soul-summoning banner could acknowledge them as its master. If not, the soul-summoning banner would kill all the cultivators that arrived and devour their souls to strengthen itself. Poof! A heaven immortal expert wanted to rush out of the abyss, but he was a step too late. He was grabbed by the tall, heavenly god that shone with golden light and crushed into a blood mist. Before that person's essence spirit could escape, it was devoured by the soul-summoning banner. Another heaven immortal expert was devoured by the heavenly fiend in a single mouthful. Both sides of the abyss were guarded by the Godfiend and could not be crossed. Above the abyss, the gigantic banner covered the skies, and even heaven immortal Luo Yang and Mei Ji did not dare to touch it. The end of the abyss had turned into an impenetrable prison. Even heaven immortal experts were dead, let alone the 1,000 earth immortals standing on the ground. Before some of the earth immortals could even fight against the heavenly fiend and heavenly god, their bodies were penetrated by the divine lights and fiend chi, turning into soulless corpses that fell to the ground. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of earth immortals died on the spot. The remaining earth immortals were scared out of their wits and stood on the spot, not daring to move. Their eyes were filled with panic and fear. Su Zimo hid in a corner and did not dare to act rashly. He merely tried his best to maintain his composure and looked for an opportunity to escape. However, even if those earth immortals stood in the abyss obediently, they might not be able to escape death. The soul-summoning banner swayed. An extremely terrifying power was released from the gigantic banner. That power had no effect on the bodies of the cultivators present. However, every cultivator felt as though their souls were about to leave their bodies. Not far away from Su Zimo, an earth immortal shrieked tragically before falling with a dazed expression. His soul was yanked away by the soul-summoning banner through the void. Even if this earth immortal had all sorts of methods, he could not defend against the power of soul summoning. If even earth immortals could not defend against it, it was even worse for Su Zimo. A strange power enveloped him. Su Zimo felt his vision darken, and he could not see any light. It was as though he had fallen into a dark hell and lost his 5 senses. Even his spirit perception was blinded. It was a terrifying feeling. It was as though an invisible hand had reached into his consciousness and grabbed his essence spirit. Sensing danger, the creation Lotus platform protected itself and released a bedazzling glow that illuminated his consciousness like daylight. However, the glow could not defend against the strange power. Although Su Zimo had many trump cards, he was helpless against this. Suddenly, the bronze square tripod in his consciousness shuddered. A dignified and terrifying aura emanated from the outer wall of the bronze square tripod that had already healed. The divine dragon etched on it suddenly opened its eyes. The dragon eyes were cold and released 2 divine lights. The strange power that entered Su Zimo's consciousness dissipated instantly. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The divine dragon on the outer wall of the bronze square tripod awakened once more. This time round, after devouring a large number of spirit treasure fragments, the life force and fluctuation released by the divine dragon was clearly much stronger than when it imparted the secret skill of the dragon race to him. Immediately after, Suzimo witnessed an extremely shocking scene. The divine dragon crawled out slowly from the outer wall of the bronze square tripod. When the divine dragon woke up for the first time, Suzimo did not see its appearance with his own eyes in the bronze square tripod. But now that he was witnessing it personally, he sensed the shock that the divine dragon gave him. The divine dragon was covered in green scales and had 2 horns on its head. It had 4 legs beneath its abdomen and looked like a blue dragon. However, the aura it emitted was much more terrifying than a blue dragon. The bloodline aura released by the divine dragon was even more noble than the blue dragon. Although Suzimo's essence spirit possessed the aura of the Taboo dragon phoenix, it seemed inferior against the divine dragon. This was not a suppression in terms of cultivation realm or strength. It was purely a suppression of the bloodline and soul. How was that possible? Disbelief flashed through Suzimo's eyes. As a taboo, the dragon phoenix could definitely suppress all dragons. How could he be? A thought flashed through Suzimo's mind, and a terrifying guess surfaced. The answer was obvious. The sacred beast, Azure dragon. In Tianhuang mainland, the dragon race had a total of 5 lineages: the illumination dragon, hornless dragon, horn dragon, blue dragon, and winged dragon. Among them, the blue dragon lineage had the strongest overall combat strength. The main reason was because the blue dragon lineage had more of the Azure dragon bloodline. However, there had never been a true Azure dragon in Tianhuang mainland. The Azure dragon was the legendary sacred beast, the progenitor of the dragon race. That would explain why the divine dragon could even take him out of the black hole after awakening. It could also explain why his dragon phoenix essence spirit was weaker than the divine dragon. Although taboos were strong, their bloodlines could not compare to sacred beasts. Legend has it that before heaven and earth were formed, the 4 sacred beasts were born in the chaos. They were the most primitive and powerful living beings. Suddenly, another terrifying thought crossed Suzimo's mind. If that divine dragon was truly an Azure dragon, why was the Azure dragon in this ancient tripod? What was the background of this ancient tripod? Right then, the Azure dragon broke free from the bronze square tripod completely and burrowed out of Suzimo's consciousness with a cold expression and a dignified gaze. In his consciousness, the Azure dragon was only the length of a finger. However, after leaving his consciousness and entering the abyss, its body expanded and became dozens of feet long. Its gigantic green scales shone with a cold glint. Its claws were sharp, as though they could penetrate everything. The Azure dragon revealed its complete dragon body, and every single inch of its body was filled with a powerful explosive power. Its aura was torrential, as though it wanted to suppress all living beings. Roar! The Azure dragon let out a deafening roar at the soul-summoning banner not far away, revealing sharp dragon fangs stained with dragon saliva. Even the dragon abyss star was shaken by the dragon roar. The ground of countless regions cracked and all living beings were silent. Chapter 1881. Suppressing the Godfiend. Chapter 1881. Suppressing the Godfiend. At the edge of the desolate lands, a young man in white robes suddenly stopped in his tracks when he heard the dragon roar. His gaze intensified as he looked into the depths of the desolate lands. That aura is very strong. The young man murmured softly, "Could there be 2 tribulations pure young spirit treasures?" Good, good, good. The young man was delighted. Thereafter, as though he sensed something, he turned back and sneered. His speed increased exponentially as he sped towards the end of the desolate lands. Before long, a golden-armored man arrived on a gigantic golden ant. "Master, Sword Immortal Yu Hua seems to have discovered you," the golden ant whispered. The golden-armored man clenched his fists and harumphed coldly. "It's fine. Since he wants to fight for the pure young spirit treasure, he has to appear. Do you think I'm afraid of him? He's alone. With your help, I might be able to defend against his moon essence sword. If there are truly 2 pure young spirit treasures, I'll definitely get my hands on one." With that said, the golden-armored man controlled the ant beneath him and sped forward with all his might, turning into a golden streak of light. Almost immediately after the golden-armored man left, space blurred and a fragrance wafted as a young woman appeared. Wu Feng, Yu Hua. The young woman murmured. To think that even the two of them would be alarmed. Before her sentence was finished, the woman had already vanished from the spot. At the end of the abyss, many Earth Immortals present shuddered when they heard the dragon roar and covered their ears with pained expressions. Even some Heaven Immortals in midair fell to the ground because of that roar. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Mei Ji swayed as well, losing their footing with bewildered expressions. Many cultivators looked at the Azure dragon that was dozens of feet long in the abyss in shock. Why are there dragons here? The aura of that divine dragon is so terrifying. Under the pursuit of the soul summoning banner, everyone could barely fend for themselves and panicked. Almost no one noticed where the Azure dragon came from. Standing in a corner, Su Zimo was dumbfounded as well. The Azure dragon that burrowed out of his consciousness was completely out of his control. The reason why the Azure dragon was alarmed was because the strange power of the soul summoning banner had barged into his consciousness and was sensed by the bronze square tripod. It was a strange feeling. It was as though the Azure dragon was provoked and left the bronze square tripod on its own accord to head outside. The moment the Azure dragon appeared, the swaying soul summoning banner paused for a moment. The sentience of the soul summoning banner could set up sinister traps to lure in many cultivators, proving that its intelligence was no weaker than many living beings. Sensing the aura of the Azure dragon, the soul summoning banner seemed wary as well. The soul summoning banner did not move right away. Instead, it waited for a while. When the soul summoning banner saw that the Azure dragon had no other helpers, its aura surged and it swayed once more. The cloth fluttered and golden light filled the air with a torrential fiend chi. The soul summoning banner suppressed the fear in its heart and had already developed an immense desire to devour the Azure dragon. The Azure dragon was clearly not corporeal. Like the heavenly god and heavenly fiend summoned by the soul summoning banner, the Azure dragon seemed to be an existence similar to spirit consciousnesses. If it could devour the Azure dragon, it would raise its strength even more than devouring the souls of all the cultivators here. Its strength would rise once more. Roar! Sensing the intention of the soul summoning banner, the heavenly god that shone with golden light and the heavenly fiend that was shrouded in black chi charged towards the Azure dragon. Roar! The Azure dragon roared once more and lunged towards the heavenly god and heavenly fiend. Boom! 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 An earth-shaking collision broke out between the heavenly god, heavenly fiend, and Azure dragon. On both sides of the abyss, countless corpses fell continuously. The heavenly god punched out with a bedazzling golden light and a torrential aura. The Azure dragon swung its tail, and its gigantic tail struck the fist of the heavenly god heavily, sending the heavenly god that was 100 feet tall flying. It sank deeply into the abyss wall and created a human-shaped pit. The heavenly fiend was filled with pitch-black fiend chi and lunged forward with its mouth wide open. The Azure dragon raised its head, and a pair of gigantic dragon horns sent the heavenly fiend flying, smashing it heavily onto the ground. The tall heavenly god charged over once more and descended from the skies with a torrential aura. As though it was looking down on the world, its gigantic feet that shone with golden light stomped down viciously on the Azure dragon. The Azure dragon slithered. Although its body seemed to be dozens of feet long, it was extremely agile at that moment. It avoided the feet of the tall, heavenly god by a hair's breadth and coiled around it instead. The Azure dragon reared its head and roared, as though it wanted to devour the world. Every single inch of its body exerted strength and tightened continuously. Although the heavenly god was tall and mighty, it could not break free from the entanglement of the Azure dragon that was dozens of feet long. Under the entanglement of the Azure dragon, creaking sounds came from the heavenly god's body and the golden light flickered. The heavenly god could collapse at any moment. On the other side, the heavenly fiend crawled up from the ground. Above its head, a pair of fiend horns shone with a strange pattern, and its aura surged as it charged over once more. The Azure Dragon was fearless, and its gaze was deep. Its body burst forth and minced the heavenly god that was coiled around it with a bang. The heavenly god turned into specks of golden light that splattered everywhere. The soul-summoning banner swayed, but the golden light did not dissipate. Instead, it gathered rapidly and returned to the banner. The heavenly god was not dead. However, the heavenly god pattern on the cloth dimmed significantly. The moment the heavenly fiend charged forward, the Azure Dragon leaped into the air and grabbed the two horns on the heavenly fiend with its front claws. The claws beneath its abdomen were strong, and its joints protruded. Its fingernails popped out and grabbed the heavenly fiend's chest viciously. A pair of dragon claws pierced the heavenly fiend's chest. The Azure Dragon exerted strength with its front claws and snapped the pair of fiend horns on the heavenly fiend's head in front of everyone. Boom! Boom! The heavenly fiend was pinned beneath the Azure Dragon and could not break free no matter how it struggled. The Azure Dragon had a dignified expression as it looked down at the heavenly fiend beneath it, roaring as though it was berating. It bit off the heavenly fiend's head. The heavenly fiend dissipated and turned into rumbling fiend chi. The banner spread and absorbed the fiend chi once more. The Godfiend was not dead. Strictly speaking, as long as the soul-summoning banner was intact, the Godfiend could be summoned continuously. Of course, even so, the Godfiend in the soul-summoning banner was severely injured after this battle. The Azure Dragon's gaze shifted as it glared at the soul-summoning banner not far away with a murderous intent. Naturally, the Azure Dragon could tell that the Godfiend earlier on was summoned by the soul-summoning banner. The soul-summoning banner had yet to realize that just as it wanted to devour the Azure Dragon, the latter had the same thought. In the knowledge of the soul-summoning banner, the Azure Dragon did not have a physical body. Although it was strong, it was only in the form of a soul and could not injure its foundation. It did not know that the Azure Dragon came from the bronze square tripod. Although the Azure Dragon could not hurt it, the bronze square tripod could devour it. Chapter 1882. Arrival of a Perfected Immortal. Chapter 1882. Arrival of a Perfected Immortal. The Azure Dragon spiraled up and looked down with a deep gaze, glaring at the soul-summoning banner with endless might. The soul-summoning banner was fearless as well, and continued waving its cloth to provoke the Azure Dragon. Roar! The Azure Dragon was enraged and roared, charging forward to fight the soul-summoning banner. This battle caused the entire abyss to tremble. Now that the soul-summoning banner was entangled with the Azure Dragon, the other cultivators finally had a chance to escape. Many Earth Immortal experts did not dare to stay on the spot and soared into the air, escaping out of the abyss. No matter what, they had to get out of this place first. Otherwise, there was a high chance they would die if they were implicated by the aftershock of this battle. Heaven Immortal Luoyang and Meiji left the abyss right away as well. However, as experts among the Heaven Immortals, the two of them did not escape far. Instead, they lingered around the abyss and waited to see what would happen. The two of them exchanged glances with a tacit understanding. Although they did not know where the Azure Dragon came from, if an internecine outcome were to occur between the Azure Dragon and the soul-summoning banner, the two of them might be the final victors. Without the help of the Godfiend, the soul-summoning banner was disadvantaged before long. Soon, the soul-summoning banner was coiled by the massive body of the Azure Dragon and could not move. Even at this moment, the soul-summoning banner did not panic at all. The Azure Dragon tugged at the soul-summoning banner, and its body shrank along with the latter. The two of them turned into a streak of light and entered Suzimo's glabella instantly. Suzimo shuddered and was shocked. A ferocious object like the soul-summoning banner had killed so many Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals in succession. If anything went wrong in his consciousness, he would definitely die. Suzimo observed his consciousness hurriedly. The moment the soul-summoning banner entered his consciousness, it struggled and swayed continuously, wanting to break free from the Azure Dragon's control. The soul-summoning banner even released a wisp of fiend chi, wanting to kill Suzimo on the Creation Lotus platform. It was way too smart and noticed the weakest existence in the consciousness right away. The battle to suppress the Godfiend and soul-summoning banner took a huge toll on the Azure Dragon as well. Right now, the glow on its body had clearly dimmed significantly. It was showing signs of losing control of the soul-summoning banner. Right then, Sanskrit sounded within the consciousness. A gigantic tripod that was filled with cracks and exuded an ancient aura descended from the skies, destroying the fiend chi that surged towards Suzimo before suppressing the soul-summoning banner rapidly. For the first time, the soul-summoning banner revealed fear when it saw the bronze square tripod. A faint scream sounded from the banner. The soul-summoning banner struggled with all its might, wanting to escape from this place. However, golden Sanskrit words descended one after another, sealing its path of escape with a tremendous force. Boom! The bronze square tripod descended and smashed heavily onto the soul-summoning banner. Howl! The soul-summoning banner shrieked tragically and smoke even billowed from its cloth. It was severely injured. Prior to this, it was fearless no matter how strong the Azure Dragon was. That was because it was difficult for the Azure Dragon to injure its foundation. But now, the appearance of the bronze square tripod caused immense damage to it instantly. The Azure Dragon took the opportunity to drag the soul-summoning banner into the bronze square tripod. A series of terrifying flames surged out from the tripod and began to incinerate the soul-summoning banner. Sigh. Suzimo's spirit consciousness moved, wanting to stop this scene. The soul-summoning banner was so powerful that he had initially intended to keep it for himself. It might be of great use in the future. However, he had not expected the bronze square tripod to devour the soul-summoning banner without a second word. Raging flames surged, and in a few breaths, the soul-summoning banner went silent. Although the soul-summoning banner had not been refined by the bronze square tripod, it was already lying at the bottom of the tripod silently. Right then, Suzimo's heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly withdrew his consciousness from his sea of consciousness and looked over. Initially, Heaven Immortal Luoyang and Meiji were watching the battle. To think that the gigantic Azure Dragon and the soul-summoning banner would vanish at the same time. Depths of the abyss. The Azure Dragon and soul-summoning banner had transformed into a streak of light and burrowed into Suzimo's glabella, out of their line of sight. The two of them were stunned for a moment and gave chase hurriedly. However, apart from the mess at the bottom of the abyss, there were only some cultivators who were severely injured or scared out of their wits and had yet to escape. The Azure Dragon and the soul-summoning banner had vanished just like that. Out of curiosity, the other Heaven and Earth Immortals returned to the abyss one after another as well and surveyed their surroundings nervously. They found nothing. How could this be? Heaven Immortal Luoyang frowned. Meiji looked puzzled and pensive. Right then, an extremely tremendous might descended and enveloped the entire abyss in a terrifying manner. Be it Heaven Immortals, Earth Immortals, Heaven Immortal Luoyang, or Meiji, all the cultivators in the abyss could not move with shocked expressions. Perfected Immortal. Heaven Immortal Luoyang had a terrible expression as he grit his teeth. Meiji frowned slightly as well, her charming face filled with helplessness. To think that this unassuming remote star would attract a perfected immortal expert. Only perfected immortal experts could release such a terrifying spirit consciousness pressure. Against the might of that spirit consciousness, the Earth and Heaven Immortals present felt as insignificant as ants, as though they could be killed with a single thought. Perfected one realm, that realm had completely surpassed the Black, Earth, and Heaven Essence realms. One could only become a perfected immortal after reaching the perfected one realm. It was an unimaginable transformation. Even a grade 9 Heaven Immortal expert had no chance of resisting against a perfected immortal. Heaven Immortal Luoyang and Meiji understood that feeling even more intensely. Both of them were geniuses among Heaven Immortals. Ordinary perfected immortal experts might not be able to restrict their freedom with a single spirit consciousness pressure. But now, neither of them could move against the might of the spirit consciousness. It was clear that the intruder was a top-tier expert within the Perfected One realm. Unknowingly, a figure had appeared above the abyss. Many cultivators looked up instinctively. It was a young man in white robes. He stood in midair like an unsheathed sword and exuded a sharp aura. The young man walked down slowly from midair. It was as though there were stone steps in the void beneath his feet. As the young man descended continuously, the entire abyss seemed to be unable to withstand the power, and the stone walls on both sides began to explode, revealing terrifying cracks as gravel rolled down. A resplendent light surged from the young man's glabella, and a halo circled behind his head. He was like a god that could not be ignored. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he recalled the scene. Back in Tianhuang mainland, a clone of King Yunyu descended and was killed by Daiyu. There was a similar glow on the glabella of King Yunyu's clone and a similar halo behind his head. It seemed like a phenomenon that could only be released by a perfected immortal expert. In that case, King Yunyu's clone should be a perfected immortal as well. Chapter 1883, Exposed. Chapter 1883, Exposed. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's gaze shifted to the young man's waist, and he could not help but exclaim in shock, "Heaven and Earth Academy." On the young man's waist was a badge made of a unique material that was neither jade, stone, metal, or gold. There was an 8 trigram pattern on it. That symbol represented Heaven and Earth Academy. Heaven and Earth Academy was a top-tier immortal sect, and its status could even compare to the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom. Sword Immortal Yuhua. Meiji looked at the young man's face and pondered for a moment. As though she recalled something, she exclaimed softly as well. Sword Immortal Yuhua had an indifferent expression as he swept his gaze across Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji. "So, you're inner sect disciples of Imperial Wind Temple and Flying Immortal Sect. You're quite sharp." Imperial Wind Temple and Flying Immortal Sect were ranked alongside Heaven and Earth Academy. However, the status of Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji in their sects was far inferior to Sword Immortal Yuhua. In Heaven and Earth Academy, a perfected immortal was a legacy disciple. As for Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji, although they were Heaven Immortal experts, they could only be considered as inner sect disciples in Imperial Wind Temple and Flying Immortal Sect. This was not only a difference in strength, even in terms of status, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji were far inferior to Sword Immortal Yuhua. Even if Sword Immortal Yuhua killed the two of them here, Imperial Wind Temple and Flying Immortal Sect would not offend him because of the death of 2 inner sect disciples. In the various immortal sects, legacy disciples had noble statuses. No matter where they were experts and were even on par with the elders of the sect. Some legacy disciples even had statuses above the elders. Sword Immortal Yuhua's gaze shifted slowly across the faces of many cultivators. Nobody dared to meet his gaze. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji were trembling in fear. The other Heaven and Earth Immortals did not even dare to breathe loudly. When Sword Immortal Yuhua's gaze landed on Su Zimo, it paused for a moment. It was not because there was anything wrong with Su Zimo. It was just that it was slightly unusual for such a weak black immortal to appear among the many Earth and Heaven immortals. Where are the 2 pure young dermic treasures from earlier on? Sword Immortal Yuhua asked slowly. Pure young dermic treasures. Everyone present was shocked. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Meiji had the same guess previously. Now that they heard it, their hearts skipped a beat. For sentient dermic treasures, there was no longer any difference between inferior, middle, and superior grade. Their grades were determined by how many heavenly tribulations they had passed. Pure young dermic treasures were the epitome of sentient dermic treasures. Pure young dermic treasures could only be created after passing 9 heavenly tribulations. Sword Immortal Yuhua harumphed coldly. These are not treasures that you guys can wield. Exalted Immortal, you're right. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang flattered hurriedly. Earlier on, I only saw 1 pure young dermic treasure. It was a soul-summoning banner that was extremely strong and could condense a heavenly god and a heavenly fiend. Godfiend's soul-summoning banner. Sword Immortal Yu Hua's eyes lit up as he interrupted Heaven Immortal Luo Yang. This pure yang dermic treasure has been lost for many years. To think that it would be born here. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang continued. However, a divine dragon appeared out of nowhere and fought against the Godfiend soul summoning banner. Thereafter, both of them vanished into thin air. Towards the end, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang felt guilty as well. Impossible. Sword Immortal Yu Hua's gaze was cold as he surveyed everyone and said slowly, "There's no way a pure yang dermic treasure can vanish into thin air. It must be among you guys. Exalted Immortal, please spare me. I really didn't take it. It's not with me." Many Earth Immortals could not withstand the spirit consciousness pressure released by Sword Immortal Yu Hua and knelt on the ground one after another, defending loudly with horrified expressions. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang added hurriedly, "If I had obtained this pure yang dermic treasure, I would definitely have offered it to you right away. I wouldn't dare to take it for myself. I'll definitely not dare to lie to you, Sword Immortal." Meiji forced a smile and lowered her head in weakness. Sword Immortal Yu Hua raised his brow slightly. "I'll give you guys a chance. Whoever takes the initiative to stand out and hand over the treasure, I can spare your life." With that said, Sword Immortal Yu Hua closed his eyes. Su Zimo sighed internally. Notwithstanding the fact that he did not want to, even if he wanted to, he no longer had the chance to hand over the soul summoning banner. At that moment, the soul summoning banner had already been refined into molten metal by the bronze square tripod. Although the bronze square tripod had yet to absorb and refine the energy within completely, there was definitely no complete soul summoning banner. After waiting for a while, no one stood out. Sword Immortal Yu Hua opened his eyes. Instantly, it was as though a sword beam flashed in those eyes, splitting the world into two and causing the temperature of the entire abyss to plummet. Sword Immortal Yu Hua nodded with a cold expression. "Very good. Since there is somebody among you guys who dares to steal the treasure in front of me, don't blame me for being merciless." The Exalted Immortal. Right then, a gray-robed Earth Immortal stood out and shouted with a trembling voice. "It's too late for you to stand out now." Sword Immortal Yu Hua looked at that person as though he was looking at a dead man. And no, it wasn't me. The gray-robed Earth Immortal was trembling in fear and waved it off hurriedly. Thereafter, he turned to look at Su Zimo in the corner and pointed into the distance, shouting, "It's him." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. However, he remained expressionless on the surface. Earlier on, when the Azure Dragon appeared and suppressed the Godfiend to retrieve the soul summoning banner, most of the cultivators fled in all directions and did not manage to see the origin and departing direction of the Azure Dragon. However, there were still a few Earth Immortals who were injured beneath the abyss and could not escape right away. The gray-robed Earth Immortal was one of them. Furthermore, when the Azure Dragon appeared, the gray-robed Earth Immortal inadvertently caught sight of it appearing from Su Zimo's forehead. However, the battle was intense at that time, and he could not believe his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. Thereafter, the Azure Dragon returned. This time round, the gray-robed Earth Immortal truly saw it clearly. The Azure Dragon and the soul-summoning banner transformed into a streak of light and landed on the green-robed Black Immortal. Worried that Sword Immortal Yu Hua would kill them all in a fit of anger, the gray-robed Earth Immortal stood out hurriedly and betrayed Su Zimo. Prior to this, no one noticed this person in the corner. Under such circumstances, a Grade 6 Black Immortal was like an ant that could be crushed by anyone. Who would care about an ant? But now, after the gray-robed Earth Immortal finished speaking, countless gazes looked over. There was scrutiny, hostility, surprise, and doubt. An unimaginable pressure descended. This skinny Earth Immortal who had a feud with Su Zimo to begin with had targeted him again once more. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo tried his best to maintain his composure. "Exalted Immortal, your words are a little ridiculous. I'm only a Grade 6 Black Immortal, and I only arrived here by accident. How could such a treasure fall into my hands? Chapter 1884, Death of an Earth Immortal. Chapter 1884, Death of an Earth Immortal. In this situation, he would die if he did not deal with it properly. It was clear that the Azure Dragon on the bronze square tripod had expended a lot of energy after the battle. Furthermore, even in its peak condition, the Azure Dragon was merely able to suppress the soul-summoning banner. It was definitely not a match for a perfected immortal. Ever since Sword Immortal Yuhua descended, the Azure Dragon closed its eyes once more and retracted its aura. It was clear that it wanted to hide. The bronze square tripod was sentient, and this was definitely not a coincidence. There was a high chance that it realized the danger. Against the accusation of the gray-robed Earth Immortal, Suzimo did not dare to be careless and replied calmly without any panic. Many cultivators scanned Suzimo with their spirit consciousnesses and frowned as well. As Suzimo had said, he was only a grade 6 black immortal. Even if the soul-summoning banner wanted to seek a master, it could not have chosen such a weak cultivator. Furthermore, if this black immortal had truly taken away the soul-summoning banner, he would have been scared out of his wits against such an accusation. How could he be so calm? Many cultivators merely glanced at Suzimo and pouted their lips, not taking the gray-robed Earth Immortal's words seriously. Everyone's first reaction was that the gray-robed Earth Immortal merely wanted a scapegoat. When the gray-robed Earth Immortal heard Suzimo's reply, he looked at Sword Immortal Yuhua hurriedly and explained, "Exalted Immortal, this person definitely took the soul-summoning banner. I saw it with my own eyes. It's absolutely true." Sword Immortal Yuhua glared at Suzimo and smiled gently. "It's indeed strange for a mere black immortal to be here." Pausing for a moment, he changed the topic and said coldly, "However, if we can't find the soul-summoning banner on that person..." Sword Immortal Yuhua turned to look at the gray-robed Earth Immortal and hollered frostily, "You'll have to die." The gray-robed Earth Immortal shuddered in fear and gulped, nodding with a pale expression. Suddenly, he regretted standing out. But now, he had no way out. Sword Immortal Yuhua shifted his gaze towards Suzimo, who was not far away. With a slight shift of his spirit consciousness, he removed the storage bag on Suzimo's waist. Under normal circumstances, storage bags were the most secretive and private items on a cultivator's body. They could not be shown to outsiders, not even their closest kin. Stealing a cultivator's storage bag was no different from killing them. Suzimo's expression was as cold as ever. However, he could not move against the might of Sword Immortal Yuhua's spirit consciousness. The difference in strength between them was way too great. Sword Immortal Yuhua opened Suzimo's storage bag and took a rough look with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Although there was no soul-summoning banner in the storage bag, there were indeed many things inside. There were even some storage bags of Earth Immortals. The treasures and wealth in that storage bag had far surpassed the scope of a grade 6 black immortal. Even the Earth Immortals present could not match him. No. Sword Immortal Yuhua threw the storage bag casually beneath his feet without taking another look. The items in the storage bag were not worthy of his attention. When he heard that, the gray-robed Earth Immortal at the side was so scared that his legs went limp. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed repeatedly, saying, "Exalted Immortal, please spare me. Please spare me. I really saw that divine dragon burrow into that person's body. If I'm lying, my body and essence spirit will be destroyed and I'll die without a burial ground." Sword Immortal Yuhua's expression was indifferent. Suddenly, he reached out and pulled Suzimo closer through the void, grabbing the latter's throat. "Let me see what's in your consciousness." Sword Immortal Yuhua smirked coldly and channeled his spirit consciousness, piercing into Suzimo's consciousness. That action was even more violent. The other cultivators shook their heads when they saw that. The consciousness was an important place for cultivators. Even if that person did not die, he would definitely suffer an irrecoverable injury if such a massive spirit consciousness barged in and scanned him brazenly. Of course, there was no pity on the faces of many cultivators. In the eyes of everyone, Suzimo was just an ant that had ascended from the lower world. Even if he was killed directly, nobody would bat an eyelid. Su Zimo's consciousness was completely exposed against the spirit consciousness of Sword Immortal Yu Hua. Apart from a dull yellow lotus platform, there was a battered bronze tripod buried in the yellow sand and nothing else. Actually, before Sword Immortal Yu Hua appeared, Su Zimo had already vaguely realized that the situation was bad when Heaven Immortal Luoyang and Meiji returned. Therefore, he made preparations in advance and sent the 9 heavens living soil into his consciousness, enveloping the creation lotus platform and bronze square tripod. Without his activation, the 9 heavens living soil would look like a handful of yellow sand without anything special about it. Sword Immortal Yu Hua could not recognize the 9 heavens living soil at all. As for the bronze square tripod, even King Yunyu made a wrong judgment back then. Given Sword Immortal Yu Hua's judgment and experience, there was even less of a chance he could tell. Sword Immortal Yu Hua was a little disappointed that he had gained nothing. He withdrew his spirit consciousness and tossed his arm casually. Bang! Su Zimo's body smashed against the stone wall in the corner of the abyss uncontrollably. He was severely injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. His gaze dimmed as he slid down from the stone wall slowly. More than half of Su Zimo's tendons and bones were shattered, and his organs were ruptured with a casual throw from Sword Immortal Yu Hua. If it was any other black immortal, they would definitely not survive against such an impact. However, Su Zimo was the Green Lotus True Body after all and possessed immense regeneration capabilities. Even though he was severely injured, he could still maintain his life force. Su Zimo sat limply in a corner of the abyss with a lowered head. However, his eyes were filled with deep rage. Even if Sword Immortal Yu Hua could not find the soul-summoning banner on Su Zimo, he had no intention of letting the latter off. He snatched Su Zimo's storage bag, probed his consciousness, and even wanted to take his life in the end. That series of actions triggered the rage and killing intent in Su Zimo's heart. From Sword Immortal Yu Hua, he could see the coldness and ruthlessness towards low-level cultivators, like him, and those who ascended from the lower worlds. This was the cruelty of the upper world. However, even if Su Zimo was indignant, he was completely helpless against the perfected one-realm Sword Immortal Yu Hua. After throwing Su Zimo down, Sword Immortal Yu Hua turned around and looked at the gray-robed Earth Immortal kneeling on the ground not far away, sighing gently. "You sure are bold to dare to lie to me." Although Sword Immortal Yu Hua's tone was not sharp, the gray-robed Earth Immortal's face was ashen. "The exalted Immortal, I didn't." The gray-robed Earth Immortal's mind was in a mess, and he was already incoherent. Sword Immortal Yu Hua said indifferently, "Since that's the case, I'll do as you wish today. I'll destroy your body and essence spirit and let you die without a burial ground." Before his sentence was finished, he waved his sleeves gently and a blinding sword beam burst forth, engulfing the gray-robed Earth Immortal instantly. "Ah!" A short, tragic cry sounded. Right in front of everyone, the gray-robed Earth Immortal was sliced into pieces by the sword beam, turning into a blood mist that dissipated in midair. Chapter 1885, Zither Immortal Meng Yao. Chapter 1885, Zither Immortal Meng Yao. When they saw that, apart from fear, many cultivators lamented internally. To think that the vicious oath the person had just sworn would come true. His body and essence spirit was destroyed without a corpse left. None of the heaven immortals present could escape from the attack of Sword Immortal Yu Hua, let alone the gray-robed Earth Immortal. This was a complete suppression in terms of strength. After killing the gray-robed Earth Immortal, Sword Immortal Yu Hua removed the storage bag on his waist and scanned it, but to no avail. Suddenly, Sword Immortal Yu Hua turned around and looked at the void not far above his head, saying coldly, "Since you're here, why hide?" "Ha." A loud laugh sounded from above the abyss. As golden light surged, a massive figure appeared. It was a gigantic ant. Golden ant race. All the earth and heaven immortals present were secretly alarmed when they saw that. The golden ant race was extremely powerful among many living beings and often appeared in the millions. Everywhere they passed, they devoured everything, and even powerful living beings like the dragon race had to avoid them. A tall figure sat on the golden ant. He wore golden armor, and his arms were bare. His eyes shone with a golden light, and his aura was terrifying. There was a halo behind the head of the golden-armored man as well. Another perfected immortal. I'm Luo Yang, an inner sect disciple of Imperial Wind Temple. Greetings, senior brother Wu Feng. When Heaven Immortal Luo Yang saw that person, he was delighted and hurried forward to bow with a respectful expression. Although both of them were disciples of Imperial Wind Temple, the difference in their cultivation realms and status was immense. Oh, it's you. The golden-armored man named Wu Feng nodded slightly. I've heard of you before. You're quite a character in the inner sect. When he heard that, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was even more delighted. He knew that with perfected immortal Wu Feng's words, his life was saved at the very least. Initially, many cultivators in the abyss were already miserable against the pressure of Sword Immortal Yuhua's spirit consciousness. But now, another perfected immortal had descended. Two completely different spirit consciousness pressures probed, clashed, and collided in the abyss. The pressure on the cultivators increased exponentially, and they could only hold on bitterly. Under such circumstances, no one noticed that the severely injured green-robed black immortal, who was initially slumped in a corner of the abyss, had already vanished. Sword Immortal Yuhua glared at perfected immortal Wu Feng with a sharp gaze. Perfected immortal Wu Feng knew how powerful Yuhua was, and he had a guarded expression, not daring to be distracted. The two perfected immortals did not notice that someone was missing from the abyss. Under such circumstances, who would pay attention to a puny ant? Even Su Zimo was shocked and bewildered. Initially, he was slumped in a corner of the abyss, recuperating in silence. Although it was a casual throw from a perfected immortal, it caused immense damage to the Green Lotus True Body, and it was difficult for him to recover within a short period of time. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit slowly before channeling his blood qi as much as possible to heal his injuries bit by bit. However, right then, a change happened. Initially, he was leaning against the hard stone wall. However, in the blink of an eye, he felt nothing behind him and fell backwards. It was as though his body had passed through a gentle and cold water barrier, as though he had entered another space. The pressure that enveloped him initially from Sword Immortal Yuhua and perfected Immortal Wu Feng had vanished as well. Su Zimo wanted to prop himself up. However, he felt a sharp pain in his body the moment he moved. Most of the bones of the Green Lotus True Body were shattered, and he could not move yet. Did I accidentally enter another space? There's another world in this abyss? Su Zimo looked at the many cultivators not far away and frowned slightly. It was a mysterious sensation. Although Su Zimo was not far from the many cultivators, he seemed to be isolated from them. The sharpness of Sword Immortal Yuhua, the might of perfected Immortal Wu Feng, and the pressure outside could not affect him at all. He could clearly see, hear, and sense everything that was happening outside. However, the cultivators outside could not see him at all. In the abyss, with a cold expression, Sword Immortal Yuhua said slowly, Wu Feng, you're too late. That pure young dermic treasure belongs to me. Fu. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng laughed. Fellow Taoist Yuhua, from what I know, there's more than one pure young dermic treasure here. Since you chose one, the other belongs to me. No. Sword Immortal Yuhua replied coldly, I'll kill whoever dares to lay their hands on these two pure young dermic treasures. You as well. Yuhua, I admit that your sword Dao is peerless in killing. However, it won't be so easy for you to kill me. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng's aura was rising as well. With just a few words, the two perfected immortals were already at daggers drawn. Fellow Taoists, why are you doing this? Right then, a woman's gentle voice sounded from afar. It was as though she was whispering in everyone's ears, and everyone could hear it clearly. The voice was extremely pleasant, as though it had a magical power that could intoxicate one. Even the atmosphere between Sword Immortal Yuhua and perfected Immortal Wu Feng eased significantly. Everyone turned over. A woman walked over slowly from the distant horizon. She was tall and wore plain blue palace robes that accentuated her voluptuous figure perfectly. It was moving. The woman's face was fair and flawless. Her skin was white as snow, and her black hair was tied into a bun with a few jade hairpins. She had a refined aura and walked through the air with a graceful bearing that was mesmerizing. Many cultivators in the abyss could not shift their gazes away from the woman's face. Even Suzimo could not help but exclaim internally when he saw that woman. She was indeed a peerless beauty. Meiji could be considered as a rare beauty and was seductive. However, she was completely inferior compared to this woman in palace robes. Consort Yu was probably the only one who could match her in terms of pure appearance. However, there was a faint coldness in the eyes of the woman in palace robes that kept people at arm's length. When perfected Immortal Wu Feng saw who it was, his gaze turned fervent as he walked forward with a smile. Today's trip was truly not wasted. To think that I would be able to meet Fairy Meng Yao here. Greetings, Senior Sister Meng Yao. Meiji retracted her charming appearance and bowed respectfully. It's Fairy Meng Yao. Who is Fairy Meng Yao? She's one of the 4 great fairies, Zither Immortal Meng Yao. I heard that Fairy Meng Yao's status is incomparably noble. Not only is she a legacy disciple of Flying Immortal sect, she's also a princess of the great Jin Immortal Kingdom with the bloodline of the royal family. Every single one of the 4 great fairies is charming and devastatingly beautiful. It's a blessing of 3 lifetimes to be able to catch a glimpse of them from afar. To think that I would be able to meet the Zither Immortal Meng Yao today. Ding! Right then, a strange Zither sound sounded. Meng Yao raised her finger gently, and a few silver threads burst forth, entering the glabella of the cultivators who were discussing instantly. Before the excitement on the faces of the few cultivators dissipated, they died on the spot. Chapter 1886, Dao Heart Crack. Chapter 1886, Dao Heart Crack. The obsession in the eyes of many cultivators vanished instantly, replaced by fear and shock. Prior to this, no one had expected such a devastatingly beautiful woman to be so terrifying that she could kill so many people with a single wave of her hand. In the abyss wall, Suzimo merely narrowed his eyes without revealing any surprise. The aura released by Zither Immortal Meng Yao was clearly not weaker than Sword Immortal Yu Hua or Perfected Immortal Wu Feng. This was also a perfected immortal expert. The coldness in her eyes when she looked at the other cultivators was no different from Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng. Apart from Yu Hua and Wu Feng, the other cultivators present were like ants and fishes in the eyes of this woman. Their lives were worthless. Sword Immortal Yu Hua's expression was calm even after the death of the few cultivators. Haha. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng was stunned for a moment before he reacted and burst into laughter. Good kill. Fairy Meng Yao is not someone you guys can discuss casually. Sword Immortal Yu Hua was a little disdainful towards Perfected Immortal Wu Feng's flattery and pouted his lips, asking indifferently, why? Are you interested in the Godfiend soul summoning banner as well, Fairy Meng Yao? If you're interested, I'm willing to withdraw from the fight for this pure young dermic treasure, Perfected Immortal Wu Feng said immediately in a deep voice. When he heard that, Suzimo sneered internally. On the surface, it seemed like Perfected Immortal Wu Feng was trying to curry favor with Fairy Meng Yao. However, in reality, if Perfected Immortal Wu Feng were to withdraw, it would mean that Fairy Meng Yao would fight against Sword Immortal Yu Hua for the Godfiend soul summoning banner. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng was extremely scheming and was trying to fake a retreat so that he could reap the rewards later. With an indifferent expression, Meng Yao shook her head. Fellow Taoists, you've misunderstood. I'm not here for the Godfiend soul summoning banner. I don't want any other treasures here. I only want an ancient zither made of parasol tree wood. The mention of that had Suzimo's heart skipping a beat. The ancient zither that Fairy Meng Yao mentioned seemed to be the one he had encountered previously. It was also sentient and had killed many people. The ancient zither was accompanied by an ancient flute. After seeing the bronze square tripod, the zither and flute fled and disappeared. At that time, Su Zimo already felt that the ancient zither was unusual. To think that it would attract a perfected immortal expert. Perfected immortal Wu Feng smiled. Fairy Meng Yao loves music and entered the Tao with her zither. Everyone knows that. Naturally, this ancient zither belongs to you. I searched elsewhere in the abyss earlier on, but there were no traces of the ancient zither. Fairy Meng Yao's beautiful eyes shifted to the many cultivators. Therefore, whoever among you who has this ancient zither can hand it over now. Her voice was extremely pleasant. However, the moment she said that, everyone present shuddered and lamented internally. The group of them had gone through countless tribulations to arrive here. However, they were encircled by the soul-summoning banner and nearly died. Everyone had just escaped, but they were now trapped here by the 3 perfected immortals with no choice. Even after 10 breaths, no one stood out. What do you guys think? Meng Yao asked. Sword Immortal Yu Hua shrugged his shoulders and said casually, "We'll search them one by one. I truly don't believe that so many treasures can disappear into thin air." That's right. Wu Feng said coldly, "Anyone who steals treasures will be killed without mercy." Meng Yao nodded. "We'll do as you say, fellow Taoists." With a single thought of Sword Immortal Yu Hua's spirit consciousness, the storage bags on the waists of many cultivators present were removed and the spirit consciousness imprints were erased with ease. Splash! The items in the storage bags fell to the ground. Essence spirit stones, elixirs, dermic treasures, secret manuals, and spirit components were poured out. Many cultivators had ugly expressions. The 3 of them searched through the items, but still could not find the Godfiend soul summoning banner and ancient zither. Perfected immortal Wu Feng discovered a few interesting items among them. After scrutinizing the items for a while, he placed them in his bag in front of many cultivators and took them for himself. 2 heaven immortals were enraged and clenched their fists. They grit their teeth but did not dare to say anything. Those few items were theirs. This was a blatant robbery. Very good. Sword Immortal Yu Hua was expressionless. Let's see how much longer you can hide. As he said that, he pulled a heaven immortal in front of him and sent his spirit consciousness into the latter's consciousness. After a fruitless search, he tossed the latter aside. Perfected immortal Wu Feng patted the golden ant beneath him, and the ant waved 2 slender golden feelers on its head, sweeping the heaven immortal over. Similarly, he searched the person's consciousness with his spirit consciousness brazenly. After obtaining nothing, Perfected immortal Wu Feng sent the person before Meng Yao with a smile. "Fairy, please check." She scanned the person's consciousness with her spirit consciousness before exiting. Throughout the entire process, the heaven immortal could not resist at all and his face was pale. Before long, it was the 3rd heaven immortal's turn. The person was a black-robed young man. There was a hint of sharpness in his body, and he had a prideful expression. Taking a deep breath of air, the black-robed young man said in a deep voice, "Exalted immortals, please show mercy. I'm willing to swear that I'm not hiding the Godfiend soul summoning banner and ancient zither. If I break the vow, cut the crap." Sword Immortal Yu Hua pulled the black-robed young man over and grabbed his throat, sneering, "Your vow is worthless in my eyes." The black-robed young man's face flushed red and green veins popped up on his forehead. His eyes were filled with rage, and he could no longer hold it in as he stuttered. "Why, you guys are people of the immortal sections. When you do things, cough. You're so domineering and unreasonable. How are you different from cultivators of the fiend domain? You have a death wish." Sword Immortal Yu Hua spat out 2 words and exerted strength in his palm, crushing the black-robed young man's throat. A tremendous power burst forth and shattered the latter's essence spirit as well. A heaven immortal was dead. The other cultivators were ashen when they saw that. Sword Immortal Yu Hua surveyed everyone with a sharp gaze and said slowly, "Let me tell you, if anyone from the fiend domain were to come, they would have killed all of you long ago before searching for the location of your dermic treasures. That's the difference. We are already being compassionate by sparing your lives. You had better behave yourselves. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng looked down at everyone and smirked. Su Zimo watched coldly with a cold expression. Even Heaven Immortal experts were trampled mercilessly by Sword Immortal Yuhua without any dignity remaining. The coldness in the eyes of the three perfected Immortal experts was innate and deeply rooted. It was as though their actions were a great gift to the many cultivators present. However, Su Zimo knew that the damage to everyone's essence spirits was secondary after experiencing such humiliation. More importantly, there would definitely be scars left in the Tao hearts of every cultivator, affecting their future cultivation. If they could not dispel that negative impact, it would be extremely easy for them to develop mental demons in their future cultivation. The cracks in their Tao hearts would increase until their Tao hearts collapsed. Su Zimo was not spared either. Chapter 1887, Dragon Corpse Awakening. Chapter 1887, Dragon Corpse Awakening. If he wanted to repair his Tao heart's injuries and dispel his mental demons, the simplest way was to fight back and suppress Sword Immortal Yuhua. However, Su Zimo knew that the difference between them was way too great. Even if he released all his trump cards, he could not defend against a single finger from Sword Immortal Yuhua. Right then, the bronze square tripod in Su Zimo's consciousness seemed to have sensed his thoughts and flew out on its own. The bronze square tripod circled around Su Zimo before speeding towards the back. Su Zimo was severely injured and could not move freely. He could only turn around forcibly. The space was extremely huge, and behind Su Zimo was a mountain range that extended into the clouds with no end in sight. The mountain range was lush and filled with vegetation. However, for some reason, the endless mountain range exuded a dead aura. Su Zimo scanned with his spirit consciousness and did not see any birds, beasts, or living beings. The mountain range was lined with mountain peaks that were extremely steep. The mountains could even be described as sharp, like gigantic swords that were erected upside down on the mountain range. The bronze square tripod came before the mountain range and stopped. Su Zimo did not know why. Suddenly, the bronze square tripod transformed into a streak of light and smashed towards the middle of the mountain range. Boom! There was a loud bang. Instantly, the ground shook and the entire space shook. Su Zimo was shocked and his expression changed as he turned to look at everyone in the abyss. The bronze square tripod had caused such a huge commotion. If Sword Immortal Yuhua and the other two outside were alarmed, things would be bad. But soon, Su Zimo was relieved. In the abyss, Sword Immortal Yuhua and the other two were still searching the consciousnesses of many cultivators for the location of the Godfiend soul summoning banner and did not notice anything. Su Zimo was puzzled. He was less than 100 feet away from Sword Immortal Yuhua and the others. Although it seemed like there was only a wall between them, they could not sense the existence of that space at all. What sort of a place was this? Ancient ruins? An ancestral secret ground? Boom! Another loud bang sounded behind him as the bronze square tripod collided against the gigantic mountain range once more. Countless rocks shattered and rolled down. Su Zimo frowned. The bronze square tripod was already sentient, and there was naturally a reason for its actions. However, Su Zimo could not figure out the reason. Boom! 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 The bronze square tripod showed no signs of stopping and struck the mountain range repeatedly, as though it wanted to penetrate the mountain range before stopping. The cracks on the mountain range increased, and Su Zimo gradually noticed something strange. After many ancient trees and boulders rolled down, a dark golden light could vaguely be seen from the mountain range. However, under the relentless collisions of the bronze square tripod, dust billowed and Su Zimo could not see everything clearly. He did not know what was within the mountain range. Boom! 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 The bronze square tripod was still striking continuously. Above the mountain range, the mountain peaks that towered into the clouds and were as sharp as gigantic swords began to shatter as well, and countless boulders rolled down. The strange thing was that the mountain peaks did not collapse completely. After the boulders on the surface of the mountain peaks rolled down, their true appearances were revealed. With a thought, Su Zimo abandoned his severely injured Green Lotus true body for the time being. His essence spirit left his body and arrived before the mountain range to take a look. Pissed, Su Zimo was shocked. The mountain peaks were gigantic dark golden bone spikes that soared into the skies with an extremely terrifying aura. The gigantic bone spikes alone were almost 1,000 feet tall. Su Zimo looked down and saw that the dark golden lights revealed in the mountain range were gigantic scales. The light on the scales had already dimmed significantly without any signs of life. However, the aura they emitted was still unusually terrifying. That was the aura of the dragon race. Su Zimo was dumbfounded. He finally understood. This was not an endless mountain range, but a gigantic dragon corpse. The terrifying bone spikes that surged into the skies on the back of the dragon alone were close to 1,000 feet long. How massive was the body of this dragon? At the same time, Su Zimo confirmed something. It was not a coincidence that the bronze square tripod brought him to the Dragon Abyss Star. Its true intention was probably the gigantic dragon corpse before him. The reason why Su Zimo could enter this place was probably because of the bronze square tripod and the dragon phoenix aura in his essence spirit. It was unknown how long the dragon corpse had existed in this space. Over the years, even the dust accumulated on it had gradually weathered, forming soil and rocks with vegetation and ancient trees. However, the dragon corpse had not rotted and was preserved till now. This was the horned dragon lineage of the dragon race. Their physiques were the strongest and they were clad in scales with shocking defense. Although it was a dragon corpse and it was only the tip of the iceberg, Su Zimo could sense pressure similar to Sword Immortal Yu Hua and the other two from this corpse. The combat strength of this divine dragon when it was alive was definitely not weaker than Sword Immortal Yu Hua and the other two. In fact, it might even be more terrifying than the 3 perfected immortals outside. This dragon corpse is neither rotten nor damaged. If I can control this dragon corpse, I'll probably be able to fight against the 3 perfected immortals outside with the powerful body of the horned dragon lineage. Su Zimo murmured softly before shaking his head. Unfortunately, my essence spirit is too weak and I can't mobilize this dragon corpse at all. Su Zimo's essence spirit had the dragon phoenix essence spirit and could fuse perfectly with the dragon corpse without any resistance. However, the difference in cultivation realm between his essence spirit and the dragon corpse was way too great. There was a high chance that the dragon corpse before him was the corpse of a perfected one-realm horned dragon or even something of a Dragon King level. However, Su Zimo's essence spirit was only at the black essence realm. Even if his essence spirit fused perfectly with the horned dragon corpse, he would not be able to mobilize the dragon corpse. He might not even be able to move a single dragon claw, let alone fight. Right then, the Azure dragon on the outer wall of the bronze square tripod opened its eyes once more and crawled out slowly. The battle between the Azure dragon and the Godfiend soul summoning banner earlier on had consumed a lot of energy. It could not defeat Sword Immortal Yu Hua at all, so the Azure dragon chose to remain silent. At that moment, the Azure dragon reappeared and coiled around Su Zimo's essence spirit, charging into the horned dragon's corpse and right into its consciousness. Su Zimo was shocked when he entered the consciousness. The consciousness was vast and boundless. Although it was dead and dark, it was not exhausted. When the Azure dragon brought Su Zimo's essence spirit to the consciousness, spots of golden light appeared and gradually lit up. The next moment, the gigantic dragon corpse opened its eyes. The mountains were tumbling and the ground was disintegrating. Chapter 1888, Massive Battle. Chapter 1888, Massive Battle. At the end of the abyss, Sword Immortal Yu Hua, perfected Immortal Wu Feng, and Meng were still searching for the Godfiend soul summoning banner from the many heaven and earth immortals. In that short period of time, the 3 perfected immortals had already searched more than half of the people present, but to no avail. A hint of impatience gradually appeared on the face of perfected Immortal Wu Feng. Could someone have already left this place with the treasures? Perfected Immortal Wu Feng asked with a frown. Indeed, it's possible. You can look elsewhere. Sword Immortal Yu Hua replied indifferently. Actually, he had witnessed a divine dragon vanish into the abyss with the Godfiend soul summoning banner. A pure Yangdermic treasure could not have vanished into thin air. It must still be here. However, if perfected Immortal Wu Feng were to give up just like that, Sword Immortal Yu Hua would naturally not stop him. All of a sudden, sensing something, she frowned slightly and asked, "Fellow Taoists, did you hear anything?" She had entered the Tao with her Zither and was the most sensitive to sound. Earlier on, she vaguely heard a dragon roar. However, when she focused her attention and listened, the dragon roar disappeared, as though she had imagined it. Hear anything? Perfected Immortal Wu Feng shook his head. Suddenly, Sword Immortal Yu Hua stopped in his tracks in deep thought. Although he did not hear anything earlier on, for some reason, his heart skipped a beat. It was as though something big was about to happen on a whim. At their cultivation realm, this heartbeat would definitely not happen for no reason. It was a sign. Suddenly, a large shadow appeared above the abyss, blocking the light. Many cultivators looked up instinctively. Pissed. Everyone shuddered and gasped in shock. Even Sword Immortal Yu Hua and the other two were shocked. Their pupils constricted and they had bewildered expressions with deep fear in their eyes. Unknowingly, a golden divine dragon had appeared in the firmaments. The scales on the divine dragon were a little dim. However, every single scale was incomparably huge and filled with a ferocious aura. The divine dragon circled above the abyss and its massive body extended endlessly. It was 100,000 feet long. Sharp golden bone spikes grew from its back and soared into the skies, as though they could penetrate the void and all living beings. The divine dragon was way too massive. When its body was fully expanded, it could probably cross half the dragon abyss star. The divine dragon looked down at the many cultivators in the abyss with a cold gaze, like a god that ruled over all living beings. "Why is there a horn dragon here?" Meng murmured softly with a grim expression. "No, there's something strange about this horn dragon." Sword Immortal Yu Hua frowned and said, "The might released by the horn dragon was even superior to the 3 perfected immortals. However, the aura of the horn dragon was filled with a sense of death. Furthermore, the 3 perfected immortals could not detect the cultivation realm of the horn dragon. Fellow Taoist of the dragon race, are you from the dragon world? How should I address you?" Perfected Immortal Wu Feng did not act rashly and probed instead. The golden horn dragon remained silent. This horn dragon was controlled by Su Zimo and the Azure dragon. The reason why the 3 of them could not detect the cultivation of the golden horn dragon was because it was a corpse to begin with. No matter what, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and the other 2 had not expected a horn dragon corpse to be here. More than that, they could not imagine that someone could control the horn dragon corpse. Sword Immortal Yu Hua's gaze was cold as he glared at the horn dragon in the firmaments and said slowly, "This is not the dragon world. You had better think carefully before trying to snatch our treasures." Roar. The golden horn dragon let out a deafening roar at Sword Immortal Yu Hua. "Ah!" A series of tragic cries sounded from the abyss. Many heaven immortals swayed with pained expressions and descended from midair. If that was the case for heaven immortals, it was even worse for earth immortal experts. Blood flowed from their ears as they fell from midair with fearful expressions. Sword Immortal Yu Hua and perfected Immortal Wu Feng grunted deeply as well. Meng was well-versed in music and reacted extremely quickly. The moment the dragon roar sounded, she took out a zither from her storage bag and strummed it with her slender fingers. The clear sound of the zither echoed and fought against the dragon roar, negating the impact of the dragon roar. The golden horn dragon swooped down and charged towards Sword Immortal Yu Hua murderously. The horn dragon was already dead. Although he had the help of the Azure dragon on the bronze square tripod, Su Zimo could only barely control the dragon corpse. He could not use any divine powers or dermic arts and could only fight Sword Immortal Yu Hua head-on with his powerful dragon body. Kill. Sword Immortal Yuhua hollered, and his glabella shone brightly with a bedazzling light as a sword flew out rapidly. The sword shimmered, and the moment it appeared, it trembled continuously with a chilling intent. Moon Essence Sword. When perfected Immortal Wu Feng saw the sword, he narrowed his eyes with a wary expression. The Moon Essence Sword was the dermic treasure that made Sword Immortal Yuhua famous. It was incomparably sharp and could slay countless strong foes with extreme ferocity. Against the impact of the golden horn dragon, Sword Immortal Yuhua had a fearless expression and slashed upwards with a bright gaze. A sword beam burst forth like mercury. It was too fast. If it was a true golden horn dragon, it might have been able to dodge it. But now, the golden horn dragon was controlled by Su Zimo's essence spirit after all. Even if he sensed Sword Immortal Yuhua's attack, his reaction was a step slower. The golden horn dragon only had time to lower its head slightly. Clang! The sword beam struck the head of the golden horn dragon and sparks flew as the sound of metal clashing echoed. MMM? Sword Immortal Yuhua's expression changed. Although his Moon Essence Sword was not a pure young spirit treasure, it was an 8 tribulation spirit treasure. Coupled with the cultivation technique he cultivated, even dragons of the same cultivation realm would not be able to withstand that slash. However, the golden horn dragon before him was completely unharmed. Su Zimo was delighted. Although it was only a dragon corpse, its strength was far beyond his imagination. The golden horn dragon defended against Sword Immortal Yuhua's slash and arrived before him in the blink of an eye. The dragon horns on its head smashed towards the latter. It was already too late for Sword Immortal Yuhua to dodge. He could only turn the Moon Essence Sword and hold it horizontally in front of him. Boom! The gigantic horns of the golden horn dragon collided violently in the middle of the Moon Essence Sword. The blade of the sword caved in at a visible speed and curved into a terrifying arc, as though it was about to snap the next moment. Bang! Even with his Moon Essence Sword to defend, Sword Immortal Yuhua was still sent flying by the tremendous impact and smashed into the abyss wall behind him in a sorry state. Fellow Taoists, what are you waiting for? Sword Immortal Yuhua broke free from the stone wall with a dark expression and said coldly, "The Godfiend's soul summoning banner must be on this divine dragon. Kill that dragon and the 3 of us will split the treasures evenly." Perfected Immortal Wu Feng and Meng were tempted. Chapter 1889, Dragon King? Chapter 1889, Dragon King? The Horn Dragon did not merely possess a single Godfiend soul summoning banner. Given the immense strength of this Horn Dragon, it must have collected countless treasures to be able to cultivate to this realm. If they could kill it here, the 3 perfected Immortals would be able to split those treasures. Everything else aside, the Horn Dragon's horns, scales, bones, dragon blood, flesh, and so on were all rare utmost treasures that could be used as main materials for elixir and weapon refinement. Among the pure young spirit treasures, there was a dragon bone sword that was completely made from the bones of a true dragon and was extremely notorious. When released to its full stance, the dragon bone sword could even condense a true dragon. If it was any other perfected immortal, they would definitely choose to retreat and avoid the sharpness of such a massive horn dragon. However, even among perfected immortals, Sword Immortal Yuhua and the other 2 were top paragons. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng and Meng exchanged glances and made the same decision almost instantly. They were going to join forces with Sword Immortal Yuhua to slay the dragon. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng's gaze was burning as he rode on the golden ant motionlessly. Suddenly, a gigantic stone axe appeared in his palm. Meng waved her sleeves gently, and the pitch-black Zither hovered in midair in front of her. Ding! Her slender fingers plucked the strings of the Zither gently, and a steely killing intent seemed to echo from the abyss. The Zither strings quivered slightly and channeled heaven and earth essence chi. In midair, a cold saber was formed and stabbed towards the horn dragon. The saber was completely condensed from essence chi and was almost transparent. It was difficult to notice unless one focused their attention. Although she was one of the 4 great fairies, She was also a princess of the great Gene Immortal Kingdom and was decisive to kill. At this point of her cultivation, she had killed countless experts. Many cultivators were bewitched by the sound of the zither and would die on the spot if they were distracted. Kill. The moment the zither sounded, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng hollered and attacked at the same time. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng rode on the golden ant and charged towards the horned dragon with the gigantic stone axe in his hands. Extremely terrifying auras coiled around the surface of the stone axe. This was a power that perfected immortal experts could only control after condensing a Dao fruit, true essence. On the other side, Sword Immortal Yu Hua channeled his true essence power, and a round moon vaguely appeared above his head. The moonlight was bright and clear like water. When it scattered down, it enveloped Sword Immortal Yu Hua, and his aura rose rapidly. The light emitted by the moon essence sword intensified. Slash. This time round, Sword Immortal Yu Hua used a secret skill and released it with all his might. He attacked once more and swung his moon essence sword towards the horned dragon. The three perfected immortals attacked at almost the same time. Many Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals who were initially in the abyss had long escaped in the chaos. Although the attack of a perfected immortal expert did not seem powerful, the killing power released was extremely terrifying. None of the three perfected immortals used supreme divine powers. That was because the Dao fruits of perfected immortal experts contained all the Dao, dermic arts, and divine powers that they had cultivated along the way. As long as a perfected immortal expert used the power of the Dao fruit, they could release the power of a supreme divine power with every punch and kick. At the perfected immortal realm, one would begin to revert to the origin of nature. There were not many fancy fighting techniques, and every single attack seemed simple, but they were the most direct killing techniques. Roar! The horned dragon roared once more. Before the saber condensed from heaven and earth essence Qi could approach, it was shattered by the powerful dragon roar. The horned dragon circled in the air, and its 100,000 feet tall body danced in midair, emitting an oppressive aura. Shaking its head and tail, it bared its fangs and claws. Clang! The horned dragon used the dragon horns on its head to defend against the moon essence sword. The dragon horn was the toughest part of the horned dragon lineage and was even stronger than the claws of the dragon race. Sparks flew when the moon essence sword struck it. Thereafter, the tip of the sword shone brightly and sword qi spread. It struck the horned dragon's body with tinkling sounds, but was blocked by the gigantic dragon scales. Phew! The horned dragon swayed its tail and whipped the incoming perfected immortal Wu Feng. The divine dragon swung its tail and gathered the power of its massive body, colliding against the gigantic stone axe with a destructive might. Boom! The stone axe struck the dragon's tail. A massive shockwave burst forth rapidly, and the entire dragon abyss star trembled. Perfected immortal Wu Feng and the golden ant beneath him were motionless, and the entire world seemed to have frozen. Immediately after, his expression changed. The power released by that tail whip was way too terrifying, and he could not withstand it given his cultivation. Crack! 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 The golden armor on perfected immortal Wu Feng let out a jarring sound, as though it could no longer hold on and was about to fall apart. "I'm sorry." Suddenly, perfected immortal Wu Feng whispered. If he were to take that attack head-on, he would definitely be severely injured. As such, he could only divert most of his strength to the golden ant beneath him. This golden ant had followed him for many years and was loyal. However, at this critical juncture, perfected immortal Wu Feng could only endure the pain and sacrifice it. Perfected immortal Wu Feng retreated. Bang! The golden ant beneath him exploded into a blood mist, and its essence spirit was destroyed without a corpse left. The golden ant race was famous for their strength. However, it could not defend against the 100,000 feet long horned dragon and died on the spot. The horned dragon's aura surged and its massive body coiled around the three perfected immortals in a massive battle. Although Su Zimo was once a dragon phoenix, he did not know much about the horned dragon's body. Furthermore, The level of this battle had already surpassed his understanding. Although he was the one guarding the Horned Dragon's consciousness right now, the true controller of the Horned Dragon's battle was the Azure Dragon in the bronze square tripod. It was a mysterious feeling. Although Su Zimo was within, it was as though he was outside, comprehending the combat and killing techniques of the Azure Dragon race. The sound of the zither was endless. Meng Yao's slender fingers plucked the strings continuously and divine weapons burst forth from the zither one after another, covering the skies densely. However, this horned dragon was way too strong. Those weapons could not penetrate the scales of the horned dragon at all. On the contrary, against the encirclement of the horned dragon, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng were forced to retreat in defeat and could not defend at all. A gigantic dragon claw tore through the void and fresh blood splattered. Not far away, the figure of Sword Immortal Yu Hua appeared with a gigantic blood scar on his chest that was so deep that his bones could be seen. It was a shocking sight. If he had been half a step slower, he would have been torn into two by the horned dragon's claw. On the other side, Perfected Immortal Wu Feng's face was pale and his golden armor was filled with cracks. If not for that golden armor, he would have died earlier on. The body of the horned dragon was way too strong, as though it had already surpassed the Perfected One realm. The King realm was above the Perfected One realm. Could the horned dragon before him not be a true Dragon One, but a Dragon King? Thanks for reading on MYBOXNOVELC0M. Chapter 1890, Defeating Perfected Immortals. Chapter 1890, Defeating Perfected Immortals. If the horned dragon before him was truly a Dragon King, it did not make sense either. A king was at a level far beyond the Perfected One realm. Any king could rule over a territory with absolute dominance. The Great Jin Immortal Kingdom was ruled by a supreme immortal king and had more than 1,000 cities under his rule. Its territory was vast, and the Dragon Abyss Star was only an insignificant remote star beneath Green Cloud County. The power and authority of a king was evident. Logically speaking, any king could suppress the three perfected immortals with ease. However, the horned dragon before him had not used any techniques that belonged to a king the entire time and merely fought against the three perfected immortals with its powerful body. The three perfected immortals were puzzled as well. That was also the reason why they did not retreat right away. But now, Sword Immortal Yu Hua was almost torn apart by the horned dragon, while Perfected Immortal Wu Feng's face was pale and his golden armor was almost crippled. Both of them wanted to retreat. Right then, without the entanglement of Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng, the horned dragon let out a deafening roar in the direction of Meng Yao. Roar. The dragon roar reverberated through the world. The entire abyss was collapsing continuously as the stone walls on both sides shattered and countless rocks rolled down. Bam! Meng Yao's expression changed and one of the strings on the pitch-black zither in her hands snapped. A trickle of blood splattered on the ancient zither. The snapped zither string nearly severed all 10 of her fingers. Meng Yao's face turned pale with shock and anger. As one of the 4 great fairies, a legacy disciple of Flying Immortal Sect and a princess of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom, she had a noble status and powerful strength with countless followers. Up till this point of her cultivation, she had never suffered such a blow. Even if some paragons were slightly stronger than her, they would not be overbearing and embarrass her. If Meng Yao knew that the horned dragon was controlled by a mere grade 6 black immortal in reality, she would explode. Su Zimo was not someone who would give chances to women. Furthermore, although Fairy Meng Yao was devastatingly beautiful and had an extraordinary aura, she was no different from Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng. If he was outside earlier on, his consciousness would have been searched by Fairy Meng Yao as well. In the lower world, after Su Zimo entered the cultivation world, he overwhelmed strong foes of the same level and suppressed all the paragons and monster incarnates. He fought all the way and rose against the tides, subduing the primordial races, killing Bloodfiend and being conferred the title of the Eternal Martial Emperor. However, he had never suffered such humiliation. It did not matter if they were perfected immortals or fairies. Since they wanted to be above him, he would overturn them. The wounds left behind by Sword Immortal Yuhua on Su Zimo's Dao heart had already healed silently. Swoosh! Sensing that the situation was bad, Sword Immortal Yuhua decisively channeled his secret skill and transformed into a sword beam that soared into the skies, leaving the Dragon Abyss Star. Almost at the same time, perfected Immortal Wu Feng and Meng Yao fled as well. The horned dragon roared and its massive body spiraled upwards, chasing after them. The moment Sword Immortal Yuhua and the other two escaped from the Dragon Abyss Star, the horned dragon caught up to them. Boom, boom, boom. Su Zimo controlled the horned dragon and fought against the three perfected immortals in the starry skies once more. At that moment, almost all the living beings on the Dragon Abyss Star looked up at the battle in the starry skies with shocked expressions. What sort of a level is this battle at? By the looks of it, it might be a battle between heaven immortals. Many cultivators in Dragon Abyss City discussed. Absolutely impossible. A cultivator shook his head. Didn't you see how many Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals fled in fright earlier on? There's a high chance that the four of them are perfected immortal experts. Perfected immortal. Many cultivators lamented with envy. The City Lord of Dragon Abyss City was only a grade 9 black immortal, and perfected immortal experts were way too far away from them. Snow Wind Ridge. Duan Tianliang, Xia Qingying, Yu Hao and the others were watching as well. Heh. Duan Tianliang grinned. If I can speak to such an expert, it'll probably be enough for me to brag for the rest of my life. A dragon does not live with a snake. Yu Hao shook his head. Furthermore, in the eyes of these experts, we can't even be considered as snakes. We're just insignificant ants. In the starry skies, the blood of perfected immortals splattered continuously and the battle was almost over. Even the three perfected immortals were completely suppressed by the horned dragon. At the end of the battle, the three perfected immortals were severely injured. Helpless, the three of them had no choice but to use their life-saving methods and escape in different directions, looking wretched like stray dogs. In the blink of an eye, there was only a horned dragon left in the starry skies. Compared to the vast starry skies, the 100,000 feet long horned dragon seemed extremely tiny. Su Zimo did not chase after them. The Azure dragon in his consciousness was almost non-existent and its power was depleted. It could not hold on any longer. Through the eyes of the horned dragon, Su Zimo looked at the mysterious and vast starry skies around him with a hint of anticipation. He did not know how long it would take before he could travel through the starry skies freely. At that time, he could head to the great wilderness and meet Daiyu. Su Zimo looked at the starry skies around him reluctantly. With a thought of his spirit consciousness, his massive dragon body vanished from the starry skies. When they reappeared, Su Zimo and the horned dragon had returned to that strange space. Post this battle, the Azure dragon's aura was weak. After dragging Su Zimo's essence spirit out of the horned dragon's consciousness, it returned to the bronze square tripod and was silent. The dragon eyes on the outer wall of the bronze square tripod closed once more. Su Zimo's essence spirit returned to his Green Lotus true body as well. The creation Green Lotus was indeed powerful. Even without the control of Su Zimo's essence spirit, the Green Lotus true body did not stop his regeneration process. In that battle, his injuries healed significantly. Su Zimo could already move freely. After pondering for a moment, he left this place and arrived in the abyss to retrieve his storage bag. He collected the storage bags of the Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals who died in the abyss. The abyss was empty and silent with corpses strewn everywhere. It was a mess without any signs of life. The Earth and Heaven Immortals from earlier on had already escaped. Those experts fled in a hurry and did not dare to linger. In fact, they did not even clean up the battlefield or take away the storage bags of the many dead cultivators. This was a great gain for Su Zimo. Before long, Su Zimo surveyed the battlefield and obtained a total of 23 Heaven Immortal storage bags and more than 500 Earth Immortal storage bags. Of course, those storage bags had the spirit consciousness imprints of Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals, and he could not see what was inside yet. However, no matter what, he had benefited way too much from this trip to the abyss. The storage bags were secondary. The greatest improvement was the change in the bronze square tripod. The bronze square tripod had devoured the Godfiend soul summoning banner and was still repairing the crack on the second tripod wall. Once the second tripod wall was repaired, he would be able to comprehend more of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Furthermore, Zimo wanted to see if there were any other patterns on the second wall of the bronze square tripod to verify a guess in his mind. Chapter 1891 Southern Mingli Fire. Chapter 1891 Southern Mingli Fire. When Zimo returned to the space in the abyss, he was momentarily stunned. He looked at the scene before him in shock and remained silent for a long time. The gigantic horned dragon corpse that was initially in this space was undergoing a huge change. Golden scales fell off and shattered as its flesh withered rapidly and began to rot. Before long, the horned dragon's corpse was riddled with holes and no longer possessed the same grandeur in the battle against the three perfected immortals earlier on. Sigh. Zimo sighed gently and vaguely understood what had happened. Even someone as strong as the horned dragon before him could not match the passage of time. This horned dragon was initially sealed beneath the mountain rocks in this space without seeing the light of day. Without any external disturbances, its corpse could still remain intact. There were many ancient corpses in the abyss. Although they looked intact on the surface, a gentle touch from an external force would turn the corpses into dust without even a storage bag left. It was already incredible that this horned dragon could fight against the three perfected immortals with its final bit of energy after leaving this place. About 2 hours later, the horned dragon was left with nothing but a faint golden skeleton that extended thousands of kilometers across the world. Zimo bowed towards the corpse of the horned dragon. If not for the horned dragon, he would not have been able to defeat the three perfected immortals, and the injuries on his Tao heart would not have healed in a short period of time. If not for this space, he might not even be alive right now. After a moment of silence, Zimo suddenly recalled something. Given how strong this horned dragon was, there should be many treasures left behind. The space before him should have been created by this horned dragon. In other words, there was a high chance that any treasures left behind by the horned dragon were in this space. At that thought, Zimo was invigorated and explored the depths of the space. After traveling for almost half a day, a large number of golden palace structures appeared before him, majestic and ancient. The palace structures could not defeat the power of time either and were dilapidated, leaving nothing but ruins. However, just as Zimo was about to enter the area to check, he felt a tremendous resistance ahead. No matter what methods he used, he could not advance any further. He could not even use his spirit consciousness to scan. Strange? Zimo murmured thoughtfully, could there be a cultivation restriction in this space? He tried many more times to no avail before giving up temporarily. In his consciousness, the bronze square tripod was still refining and absorbing the power of the Godfiend soul summoning banner. After devouring the many spirit treasures scattered in the abyss, the second tripod wall was already half repaired. According to this trend, there was a high chance that the second wall of the tripod would recover after absorbing the entire Godfiend soul summoning banner. At the same time, a trace of life appeared on the second tripod wall. The situation was similar to the awakening of the Azure dragon on the first tripod wall. However, the auras of the two living beings were completely different. To be precise, the life force on the second tripod wall carried an unusual heat. Zimo was in no hurry to leave. This space also contained heaven and earth essence chi that was not weaker than the dragon abyss star. Furthermore, there was no danger cultivating here. Even the three perfected immortals did not discover the existence of this space. This was a perfect place for seclusion. Without hesitation, Zimo looked for a green stone and assumed a lotus position. He began to consume essence condensation pills and cultivated while waiting for the bronze square tripod. A year later, in his consciousness, the bronze square tripod vibrated gently and Su Zimo woke up from his seclusion. Opening his eyes, he took out the bronze square tripod and focused his gaze. The second wall of the bronze square tripod was completely repaired. Indeed, there were mysterious Sanskrit words recorded on the inner walls that were perfectly connected to the previous section of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Su Zimo looked at the words on the inner wall. The Sanskrit words turned into golden lights and entered his glabella. Every single Sanskrit word of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra contained endless logic and wisdom. Unknowingly, Su Zimo was immersed in his comprehension. When he woke up once more, another year had passed. Su Zimo let out a long breath and lamented. He had once absorbed and refined a sal tree leaf and was extremely perceptive with deep attainments in Buddhism. Even so, he had only comprehended a small half of the Sanskrit of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra in a year. He did not know the background of this Buddhist sutra. Su Zimo shifted his gaze towards the outer wall of the bronze square tripod. Indeed, there was a pattern etched on the repaired outer wall. The pattern depicted a fiery red bird that burned with flames. Although it resembled a divine phoenix, the aura it emitted was even more terrifying. If one of the four sacred beasts, the Azure dragon, was etched on the first wall, the fiery red bird on the second wall should be another one of the four sacred beasts, the Vermilion bird. Suddenly, the Vermilion bird on the wall of the tripod opened its eyes and two flames shot into Su Zimo's eyes. Instantly, a secret skill appeared in Su Zimo's mind, and he chanted instinctively, "Southern Mingli fire." The flames of the Vermilion bird were even stronger than the flames of the divine phoenixes and even Taboo Feng Huang. Although Su Zimo inherited the dragon phoenix essence spirit, he lost his dragon phoenix true body and his dragon phoenix bloodline. That meant that he lost the dragon phoenix flames. But now, he had obtained the southern Mingli fire that was even more terrifying than the dragon phoenix flames. Su Zimo was delighted. He continued to cultivate in seclusion and consumed essence condensation pills to cultivate the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and the southern Mingli fire secret skill. Unknowingly, he had already cultivated for a full 20 years in this abyss. What was worth celebrating was that he had already comprehended more than half of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra in the past 20 years and had successfully cultivated the southern Mingli fire secret skill. However, Su Zimo's cultivation realm advanced slowly. Although the green lotus true body was strong, the heaven and earth essence chi required for its growth far surpassed the need of other cultivators. In 20 years, Su Zimo had consumed close to 2 million essence condensation pills. However, his cultivation did not increase much, as though he had encountered a bottleneck. "I'm still only at the level 6 black essence realm. There are still 3 minor realms to break through to the earth essence realm, but they seem far from reach." Su Zimo sighed internally. The joy of repairing the bronze square tripod and obtaining the ancient sutra and secret skill had faded significantly over the years. The green lotus true body had brought too many benefits to Su Zimo. However, at the same time, it restricted his growth. The conditions for the creation green lotus to grow were way too stringent, and the heaven and earth essence chi required was far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Of course, if he continued cultivating and consuming essence condensation pills, Su Zimo still had a chance of breaking through to the level 7 black essence realm. However, that might take hundreds or even thousands of years. To the cultivators of the Dragon Abyss Star, it was already extremely fast if they could break through a minor realm in 1,000 years. However, it was difficult for Su Zimo to accept that. He wanted to raise his cultivation as soon as possible so that he could leave the Dragon Abyss Star and meet Dayu in the shortest possible time. Chapter 1892, Taboo Mystic Classic. Chapter 1892, Taboo Mystic Classic. Feeling a little frustrated, Su Zimo put aside his cultivation for the time being and recalled the scene of the Horned Dragon fighting against the 3 perfected Immortals. That battle was almost entirely led by the Azure dragon, and his essence spirit did not play much of a role. However, the feeling of experiencing it personally was extremely rare. The many combat techniques and killing techniques displayed by the Azure Dragon seemed to be imprinted in his mind. Of course, the combat techniques of the Azure Dragon could only be released in the body of a dragon. If Su Zimo wanted to release the combat techniques of the Azure Dragon with his Green Lotus True Body, he would have to polish and deduce those techniques continuously, slowly transforming them into combat techniques suitable for his Green Lotus True Body. In this abyss space, Su Zimo would wave his arms, bend his fingers as well as twist and turn from time to time. He fell into a mysterious state. Su Zimo had the comprehension potential, talent, and ability. He had a dragon phoenix essence spirit to begin with and was no stranger to the habits of the dragon race. He had also established the martial Dao in the Dao inheritance ground of Tianhuang mainland. Those experiences were his most precious wealth. Su Zimo was so immersed in his deduction that he even forgot about the passage of time. A long time later, Su Zimo suddenly felt dizzy and woke up from his deduction state with an enlightened expression. Unknowingly, a year had passed. The long period of deduction over the past year had taken a huge toll on Su Zimo's essence spirit. Even with the nourishment of the creation Lotus platform, his essence spirit could not withstand it and turned extremely weak, almost fainting. Of course, he had benefited immensely from the deduction in the past year. Roar! Suddenly, Su Zimo opened his mouth and let out a dragon roar. The world trembled slightly and the surrounding boulders shattered one after another, unable to withstand the dragon roar. Although his cultivation realm was still at the level 6 Black Essence realm, the power contained in that dragon roar was even stronger and more dignified than his Dragon Phoenix roar from earlier on. Su Zimo fused the strength release technique of the Azure Dragon and Dragon Phoenix into his body before transforming it into this dragon roar secret skill. That was naturally not his only gain in the past year. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of Dayu. Back then, the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness left behind by Dayu must have undergone countless deductions before it finally evolved into a cultivation technique for a mortal like him to cultivate. Dayu had spent a lot of effort and energy on this. For the past year, Su Zimo had been in a state of deduction. He did not cultivate and his cultivation realm did not advance at all. He took out some essence condensation pills from his storage bag and prepared to continue cultivating in seclusion. When his spirit consciousness swept through his storage bag, he suddenly caught sight of dozens of essence spirit stones in the corner. The heaven and earth essence chi contained by essence spirit stones was extremely pure and rich. The value of one essence spirit stone was even worth 10,000 essence condensation pills. If only I could absorb the spirit chi in the essence spirit stones, my cultivation would definitely advance by leaps and bounds. Taking out an essence spirit stone, Su Zimo played with it casually and murmured. Of course, he also knew that black immortals could not absorb the heaven and earth essence chi in essence spirit stones. Firstly, the black immortal realm was not high enough. Essence spirit stones could only be used to cultivate after one became an earth immortal. Secondly, although the essence chi in the essence spirit stone was pure, it was extremely violent. If a black immortal absorbed the heaven and earth essence chi within, their flesh and meridians would not be able to withstand it and they would explode on the spot. Those thoughts flashed through Su Zimo's mind, but he did not take them to heart. He had just consumed an essence condensation pill and started cultivating the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Suddenly, Su Zimo shuddered and opened his eyes with a bewildered expression. The moment he channeled the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, a change happened. A wisp of pure heaven and earth essence chi from the essence spirit stone in his palm surged into his body through his palm. Worried that it was his imagination, Su Zimo channeled his cultivation technique once more. The essence chi within the essence spirit stone was indeed restless. How could this be? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He was only at the level 6 Black Essence realm and under normal circumstances, there was no way he could absorb the essence chi in the essence spirit stone. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled something Dayu told him back in Tianhuang mainland. If Black Essence Realm cultivators wanted to absorb the power of Essence Spirit Stones, they would have to cultivate the few taboo mystic classics of the upper world. Could the Prajna Nirvana Sutra within the ancient tripod be one of the taboo mystic classics? Zimo opened his mouth slightly with a shocked expression. Back when he was in seclusion in the desolate lands, he had tried to test if the Green Lotus True Body could absorb the essence chi in the essence spirit stones. However, there was no reaction. But now, his cultivation realm was the same as before. The reason why he could absorb the power of the essence spirit stone was because he had cultivated an additional section of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. So, that sutra was a taboo mystic classic of the upper world. That would also explain why the power of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra could subdue yin and yang and fuse the Dragon Phoenix and Green Lotus essence spirits. According to Dayu, the few taboo mystic classics were ranked alongside the legendary peerless divine powers. Zimo was delighted when he thought about that. If he could refine essence spirit stones to cultivate, he would definitely be able to break through the bottleneck before him, and his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. However, apart from joy, he was also increasingly curious about the bronze square tripod. What was the origin of the ancient tripod? The outer walls were etched with the Azure dragon and Vermilion bird, and the inner walls were etched with a taboo mystic classic of the Buddhist monasteries. Putting that curiosity aside for the time being, Zimo took a deep breath and gripped the essence spirit stone in his palm, channeling the Prajna Nirvana Sutra with all his might. Streaks of pure and berserk heaven and earth essence chi surged into Zimo's body through his palm and into his organs and meridians. Bang! Zimo shuddered and cracks appeared on the surface of his Green Lotus True Body, causing a blood mist to burst forth. That power was way too terrifying. The wisps of heaven and earth essence chi seemed to have set off a shocking storm in Zimo's body, sweeping through his body and destroying all life. Thankfully, Zimo was the Green Lotus True Body. If it was any other body, it would not have been able to withstand that power and would have exploded. In truth, Zimo did not know. Even if some supreme experts of the upper world possessed the taboo mystic classics and nurtured legacy disciples, they would definitely not dare to let the latter absorb essence spirit stones to cultivate at the level 6 black essence realm. The risk was too great, and almost no one could survive it. These legacy disciples would have countless treasures, elixirs, and immortal herbs to temper their tendons and bones, refine their bodies, and cleanse their marrow. Typically, only at the level 9 black essence realm, and they were at the brink of breaking through, they would use essence spirit stones to cultivate and advance to the earth essence realm under the watch of their seniors. Zimo frowned and trembled slightly with a pained expression. The essence chi in the essence spirit stone surged into his body and caused immense damage to the Green Lotus True Body. However, at the same time, the powerful regeneration capabilities of the Green Lotus True Body healed his injuries continuously. Between the repeated destruction and healing, the Green Lotus True Body's absorption and refinement of the essence chi in the essence spirit stone achieved an almost perfect effect. The Green Lotus True Body grew rapidly. Zimo's cultivation realm was also rising steadily. Chapter 1893, Brewing Storm. Chapter 1893, Brewing Storm. Time flew and 30 years had passed since the change on the Dragon Abyss star. That was an unprecedented event on the Dragon Abyss star, and all the living beings on it trembled in fear. The change in the Abyss first attracted many Earth Immortals before Heaven Immortals appeared. In the end, even legendary perfected immortal experts descended while a golden divine dragon that was 100,000 feet long was provoked. The battle in the starry skies shocked the living beings of the Dragon Abyss star so much that they would never forget it. This battle had a huge impact on the Dragon Abyss star as well. There were many Black Immortals who died in the Abyss on the Dragon Abyss star. It was said that a commander of Dragon Abyss City died in the Abyss. Up till now, that abyss had always been a forbidden ground in Dragon Abyss City, and no living being dared to step foot into it. After the massive battle, the many Earth and Heaven Immortals had already dispersed. However, many cultivators and living beings on Dragon Abyss City did not dare to act rashly still. Be it the 8 major factions or the 4 great bandits, almost all of them chose to lie dormant, afraid that they would attract a calamity. It was only after 30 years, when there were no more Earth or Heaven Immortals, that the Dragon Abyss star gradually returned to normal. Many fights and killings between cultivators reappeared, and some factions were tempted to make moves as well. In a mountain range, ancient trees stood lushly. Under the shroud of the night, the forest shone with a faint green light. It was extremely terrifying, and the air was filled with a murderous aura. "Windflame, why are you looking for me?" Suddenly, a voice sounded from above. A figure stood on a branch at the top of the ancient tree, swaying with the branches as though he was stuck to it. In the depths of the forest, a gigantic shadow gradually walked out. It was a black scale fiend wolf that was dozens of feet tall. On the back of the black scale fiend wolf sat a cultivator. It was the first boss of the evil wolf army, Windflame. "Sangya, have you forgotten that Blood Sun Valley was destroyed 40 years ago?" Windflame asked. Sangya was the Dao title of the gang leader of Goshawk Gang. Fufu. Sangya stood at the top of the ancient tree and chuckled. "All these years, you've been extremely close to Blood Sun Valley and worked with them. Our Goshawk Gang has nothing to do with Blood Sun Valley." Windflame said, "You're right. However, don't forget that you and I helped a lot back when Skypillar Stronghold, Wind Cloud Gang, and Honor Villa were destroyed. And now, the Territorial Lord of Snow Wind Ridge is a survivor of the 3 major factions back then." Sangya was silent. Windflame continued, "Right now, after Snow Wind Ridge destroyed Blood Sun Valley and devoured it, its strength and reputation are rising continuously. If Snow Wind Ridge truly grows stronger, do you think those survivors of the past will let us off?" "Humph." Sangya harumphed coldly. "The reason why Snow Wind Ridge is so famous today is because of that Suzimo who appeared out of nowhere. Right now, Suzimo has already died in that abyss for 30 years. What's a mere Snow Wind Ridge worth?" Windflame said, "In my opinion, it's better to get rid of Snow Wind Ridge as soon as possible, lest they continue to grow into trouble. Furthermore, Snow Wind Ridge has accumulated countless cultivation resources in their territory after destroying Blood Sun Valley. After destroying Snow Wind Ridge, we'll split the cultivation resources evenly. It'll be enough for our 2 armies to cultivate for many years, and our strength will increase significantly." Another person walked out from the forest and said in a deep voice, "As long as our 2 armies join forces, we'll definitely be able to flatten Snow Wind Ridge with ease." The person who spoke was the second boss of the evil wolf army. "Oh, you've already cultivated to the level 8 Black Essence realm." Sangya swept his spirit consciousness across the second boss and was slightly surprised. "Gang leader Sangya, you sure are sharp." The second boss smiled gently. "Notwithstanding the fact that Suzimo is already dead, even if he's still alive, including your vice gang leader, the 4 of us grade 8 Black Immortals can kill him together." Sangya pouted and said with conviction, "Even Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals were not spared from that unforeseen event 30 years ago. As a grade 6 Black Immortal, he must have definitely died in that abyss. It'll be strange if he's still alive." Windflame asked, "In that case, are you agreed, brother Sangya?" Sangya pondered for a moment before nodding. "No problem. In 10 days, our 2 armies will gather and flatten Snow Wind Ridge." "All right." Windflame burst into laughter. Snow Wind Ridge. 4 cultivators of the upper world, 30 years passed in the blink of an eye. Over the years, although the number of people in Snow Wind Ridge increased continuously and their strength increased steadily, the cultivation realms of everyone in Snow Wind Ridge did not change significantly. The territorial lord of Snow Wind Ridge, Yu Hao, was still only a grade 7 Black Immortal. The greatest change was that Yu Hao and Xia Qingying were already married and became Dao companions. After destroying Blood Sun Valley 40 years ago, the 2 of them were already in love and had feelings for one another. It was only natural that they were Dao companions now. Outside the hall, the wind and snow howled. Yu Hao had a calm expression as he stood at the entrance. looking at the snow outside in silence with a hint of worry. Light footsteps sounded behind him. "Husband, what are you worried about?" Xia Qingying could tell that Yu Hao was troubled and came to his side, asking gently. Yu Hao turned around and smiled at Xia Qingying without saying anything. "Are you worried about fellow Taoist Su?" Xia Qingying asked again before sighing. "Sigh. There's no news of fellow Taoist Su for so many years. He's probably doomed. Brother Su is my benefactor. Back then, I was the one who did not stop him and allowed him to take the risk alone." Yu Hao lowered his head slightly in self-blame. "It's not your fault. Given fellow Taoist Su's character and methods, if he wants to go, who can stop him?" Xia Qingying consoled. Yu Hao said, "Over the years, although Snow Wind Ridge has been developing steadily and its strength has been increasing continuously, there has always been a huge latent danger. The reason why Snow Wind Ridge was able to gain a foothold on the Dragon Abyss Star after destroying Blood Sun Valley without anyone challenging us for the past 10 years was entirely because of Brother Su's notorious reputation. But now that Brother Su's fate is unknown and Snow Wind Ridge lacks a top-tier expert like a Grade 8 Black Immortal, I'm afraid trouble is about to descend." Xia Qingying smiled. "Snow Wind Ridge has you. Cultivate diligently and try to break through to the level 8 Black Essence realm as soon as possible." Yu Hao shook his head. "Given my current cultivation, I'll need at least 1,000 years to reach Grade 8 Black Immortal even if I have sufficient resources. I'm worried that Snow Wind Ridge won't be able to last till then." "How can that be?" Xia Qingying smiled. "We've just been rebuilt for dozens of years and don't have any deep feud with the major factions. I believe they won't attack Snow Wind Ridge for no reason either." Yu Hao looked into the distance and said softly, "I'm not worried about the major factions, but the two bandit groups." Chapter 1894, Arrival of a Great Enemy. Chapter 1894, Arrival of a Great Enemy. It was dark in Snow Wind Ridge. Most of the spirit farmers were already resting and 10 squads of guards patrolled the surroundings of Snow Wind Ridge constantly, guarding the land. "Brother Han, what's up with the territorial lord recently? Why did he send so many people to patrol?" "That's right. Previously, there were at most 3 squads patrolling at night. Now that there are 10 squads guarding, it's making people nervous. There might be something going on." The cultivator surnamed Han said in a deep voice, "I heard that every night, Commander Xin Fei will lead hundreds of people to patrol the area within a 5 kilometers radius. Is it that serious?" "In my opinion, you guys are worrying for nothing." Another cultivator laughed. "Bandits, we're under attack." Suddenly, a sharp and hurried shout sounded in Snow Wind Ridge. Immediately after, a gigantic flame surged into the skies and exploded in midair, piercing through the dark night. This was a warning signal from Snow Wind Ridge. The 10 squads of patrolling cultivators were shocked. The warning signal would not be released unless it was absolutely necessary. This indicated that they were faced with a great enemy. "Hurry, inform everyone." The cultivator surnamed Han made a prompt decision and ordered. Almost at the same time, flames lit up in the initially pitch-black Snow Wind Ridge and countless cultivators were jolted awake. Instantly, Snow Wind Ridge turned incomparably noisy. Yu Hao's figure flashed in midair. Black Immortals required a lot of essence chi to hover in midair. However, Yu Hao couldn't care less and said in a deep voice, "Everyone of Snow Wind Ridge, don't panic. Listen to my orders and gather in the hall. Summon your dermic treasures and prepare to face the enemy." At the same time, Yu Hao took out 7 talismans from his storage bag and injected essence chi to release them. The 7 talismans turned into streams of light and split into 7 directions, disappearing into the night. For the past few days, Yu Hao had an ominous feeling that seemed as though it was a hunch. Therefore, the moment Xin Fei released the warning signal, Yu Hao appeared right away and sent out the messenger talismans. That might be Snow Wind Ridge's only hope. "Wenjun, follow me to receive Xin Fei." Yu Hao turned to look at Gu Wenjun, who was speeding over not far away. "All right." Gu Wenjun nodded without hesitation. "Husband, I'll go with you." Xia Qingying rushed over, and said hurriedly. Yu Hao shook his head. Stay here. Snow Wind Ridge needs someone to take charge of the situation. He paused and thought for a moment before saying, If we don't return, don't hesitate. Immediately, I'll definitely wait for you to return. Xia Qingying interrupted Yu Hao and said firmly. Yu Hao reached out and caressed Xia Qingying's cheek gently, his eyes filled with deep reluctance and love. Thereafter, he took a deep breath and made up his mind, turning to leave. Gu and Jun followed closely behind. The two of them rode on demon beasts and had just arrived at the entrance of Snow Wind Ridge when a gigantic body stood up beside them. It extended its palm and helped Yu Hao and Little Fatty up. A level 7 Black Essence Realm Silver Giant. I'll do it. After saying that, the Silver Giant placed Yu Hao and Gu Wenjun on his shoulders and strode in the direction of the signal. That single step of the Silver Giant covered dozens of feet. It was much faster than their demon beasts. Before long, Yu Hao felt the ground tremble violently. Howl. A series of terrifying wolf howls sounded from afar. It's the evil wolf army, Gu Wenjun said hatefully. The evil wolf army was also one of the culprits behind the destruction of their 3 major factions back then. It'll be fine if it's just the evil wolf army. Yu Hao looked at the distant horizon and murmured softly without finishing his sentence. Before long, pairs of ghastly green eyes appeared in the night ahead. They were dense and a malevolent aura surged over. Even in the night, dust could be seen billowing. There were at least tens of thousands of them. Although the Silver Giant had an extraordinary bloodline and powerful combat strength, he still felt a sense of trepidation against such an apocalyptic army. Even if he was a giant, he would be trampled to death by such a torrent. At the front of the torrent, dozens of figures were sprinting wildly, as though they could be drowned by the torrent at any moment. Their leader was Shen Fei. Second brother, I'm here. Yu Hao roared and leaped up, summoning his gigantic axe from his storage bag and charging forward. Gu Wenjun's face was a little pale. However, she mustered her courage and charged forward. Big brother, hurry and retreat. Don't bother about me. Shen Fei shrieked. In that short period of time, a few more figures were caught up by the army behind and drowned by the sharp claws of the black scale fiend wolves. Yu Hao did not hesitate. If he did not advance, Shen Fei would definitely die before he could escape to Snow Wind Ridge. Bang! Yu Hao wielded his gigantic axe and descended from the skies, crossing Shen Fei's head to slash down viciously at the army behind. If it was a one-on-one fight, it would be difficult for any grade 7 Black Immortal to withstand the power and aura released by Yu Hao. However, the moment Yu Hao's gigantic axe descended, hundreds of dermic treasures charged over. Yu Hao shuddered and was sent flying by the tremendous force. His palm was torn, and he almost could not hold on to the gigantic axe. The torrent did not show any signs of stopping and continued surging forward. Gu Wenjun's attack was drowned in the torrent without causing any waves. Bang! 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 Just as Yu Hao and the others were about to be devoured by the evil wolf army, a gigantic figure charged over. It shone with silver light and roared repeatedly. The Silver Giant attacked. The cultivators of the evil wolf army at the front were knocked over by the Silver Giant. Even the black scale fiend wolves could not defend against the immense power of the Silver Giant, and chaos broke out right in front of the army. Let's go together. With that breather, Yu Hao roared at the Silver Giant. He knew in his heart that the few of them were completely helpless against the army before them. The Silver Giant waved his fists in the evil wolf army and fought in all directions. Initially, he charged into the army and killed many of them, causing some chaos. However, in the blink of an eye, even more and even stronger evil wolf army soldiers attacked. In a few breaths, the Silver Giant was covered in injuries. The Silver Giant roared once more and charged out before he was completely surrounded. With his bloodied hands, he pulled Yu Hao and the other two and fled towards Snow Wind Ridge. Fresh blood flowed from the Silver Giant's body. The silver blood left a clear mark behind him that shone brightly and was extremely striking in the night. Gritting his teeth, The silver giant endured the pain and strode forward wildly. The lights of Snow Wind Ridge were right ahead. Humph! Right then, a cold voice sounded. Let's see where you can escape to. Chapter 1895, Formation. Chapter 1895, Formation. The leader of the evil wolf army, Wind Flame, had a mocking expression as he rode on the tallest black-scale fiend wolf and leaped to the front of the army. The black-scale fiend wolf was almost comparable to the silver giant in size. That was the alpha of the black-scale fiend wolves. If the silver giant was in good condition, the alpha might not be able to catch up to him. But now, the silver giant was covered in injuries and limped. Before long, the alpha caught up to him. Howl! The alpha howled and lunged forward murderously, chomping down on the silver giant's neck. Sensing the evil wind behind him, the silver giant punched in reverse towards the alpha without even turning back. Bang! The silver giant's fist was like a gigantic hammer that smashed heavily on the alpha's head with a dull thud. If that attack had landed on the head of any other demon beast, its brain juice would have ruptured and it would have died on the spot. However, the skulls of wolves were the toughest. There was a layer of black scales on the head of the black scale fiend wolf that was even more indestructible. The silver giant's fist merely made the black scale fiend wolf feel dizzy, but it was not injured. Bastard, you're courting death. Wind Flame's expression darkened as he raised the saber in his hands and slashed forward. The saber beam tore through the void and descended instantly. Yu Hao, Shenfei and Gu Wenjun attacked at the same time and summoned their dermic treasures. However, they were sent flying by the saber beam of Wind Flame. Although they were only a single cultivation realm apart, the difference in strength between them was immense. Watch out! Yu Hao exclaimed, but it was too late. The saber beam tore through the dermic treasures of Yu Hao and the other two and paused for a moment before landing on the silver giant's wide back. Shing! Fresh blood splattered and silver light surged. A gigantic wound so deep that his bones could be seen appeared on the silver giant's back. From his left shoulder to his right waist, it was a shocking sight and almost sliced him into two. The silver giant's body swayed and his legs went limp, almost kneeling on the ground. The blood that spewed from the wound on his back splattered on the faces of the Alpha and Wind Flame, causing the man and wolf to pause for a moment. The silver giant cried out in pain and seized the opportunity to carry Yu Hao and the other two forward. Snow Wind Ridge was right ahead. Screech! Suddenly, a piercing cry sounded in midair. Immediately after, a large shadow enveloped down, blocking the starlight and killing intent surged. Yu Hao and the other two looked up instinctively. In midair, a gigantic goshawk flapped its wings and swooped down, charging towards the silver giant on the ground. On the neck of the goshawk sat a figure. It was the gang leader of the goshawk gang, Sangya. You survivors should have died a long time ago. Sangya sneered. The goshawk's gaze was sharp and shone with a cold glint. A pair of menacing sharp claws extended from its abdomen, and its joints protruded with immense strength as it grabbed towards the silver giant. You guys leave first. Yu Hao took a deep breath and leaped down from the silver giant. He channeled his essence spirit and conjured a lesser divine power, pointing it at the goshawk. Immobilize. The lesser divine power, body immobilization technique. Puny tricks. Sangya sneered and waved his sleeves, creating a violent gust of wind as divine power spread. Lesser divine power, wind manipulation. The moment the body immobilization technique descended, it was dispersed by the wild wind and did not affect the goshawk at all. The goshawk was extremely fast, and its claws were like lightning as it grabbed Yu Hao below. Yu Hao tried his best to dodge, but his abdomen was still pierced by a sharp claw. Instantly, blood gushed out. Husband! A pained cry sounded from the direction of Snow Wind Ridge. Yu Hao tried his best to look back and shouted with all his might, "Don't worry about me. Activate the formation." Formation? In midair, Sangya was slightly stunned. Right then, A gigantic palm reached over and forcefully saved Yu Hao from the goshawk's sharp claws. His left shoulder was crushed by the goshawk's sharp claws as well. The silver giant protected Yu Hao and the other two and continued sprinting towards Snow Wind Ridge. Finally, the silver giant escorted Yu Hao and the other two back to Snow Wind Ridge and fell into a pool of blood. Behind him was the army of the evil wolf army and the goshawk gang. Densely packed, they swarmed over with a torrential aura like locusts. There were 100,000 of them. There were also hundreds of goshawks circling in midair. This was the special army of the goshawk gang. Although there were only a few hundred of them, they were almost invincible in midair with their goshawks. Many cultivators of Snow Wind Ridge had ashen expressions when they saw that. Although Snow Wind Ridge had grown rapidly over the years, there were less than 20,000 guards in the territory. The guards of Snow Wind Ridge could not defend against the 100,000-strong army of the two great bandits. In fact, some of the Snow Wind Ridge guards even stood out in fear and fled outside, begging for mercy. "You guys are stupid." Duan Tianliang could not help but curse. "Our opponents are bandits who kill people like flies. If you beg for mercy now, you'll definitely die." His words were drowned by the clamor of the army. Not many people could maintain their composure and rationality in the face of a calamity. "Mistress, we have to stop them. Otherwise, the morale of the army will be in chaos, and they will collapse without a fight." A cultivator could not help but say. "Don't stop them," Xia Qingying said coldly with a terrible expression as she looked at the cultivators of Snow Wind Ridge who fled and begged for mercy. As Duan Tianliang had said, the cultivators of Snow Wind Ridge who escaped died the fastest. The 100,000-strong evil wolf army and goshawk gang ignored them and trampled over, turning the cultivators into sludge. When the silver giant, Yu Hao and the others returned to Snow Wind Ridge, Xia Qingying pursed her lips tightly and conjured hand seals repeatedly. Essence Qi burst forth from her fingertips and entered the ground. "Activate!" Xia Qingying hollered softly. Whoosh! Suddenly, a mysterious glow lit up in the area and a shimmering barrier was formed rapidly at the outer perimeter of Snow Wind Ridge. The barrier split Snow Wind Ridge and the 100,000-strong army outside into two. The 100,000-strong evil wolf army and goshawk gang were aggressive and could not stop their momentum at all. They could even charge through a mountain of blades or a sea of flames, let alone a barrier in front of them. Boom, boom, boom. A loud bang sounded as the 100,000-strong army charged forward. Waves appeared on the barrier like water ripples and vibrated continuously. Many Snow Wind Ridge cultivators were scared out of their wits. However, everyone was shocked to discover that none of the 100,000-strong evil wolf army and goshawk gang could break through the barrier. Outside the barrier, countless cultivators fell to the ground and were trampled by the army behind. The army at the front could not charge in. The army at the back did not understand and continued charging. The 100,000-strong army fell into chaos. This single charge caused many cultivators of the evil wolf army and goshawk gang to die under the trampling of their own armies. Even the leader of the evil wolf army, Wind Flame, was almost drowned and trampled into sludge by the 100,000-strong army behind him. Chapter 1896, Assault. Chapter 1896, Assault. Wind Flame rode on the Alpha and broke free from the chaotic army. He was already in a sorry state with a terrible expression. Screech! A series of piercing cries sounded from midair. Hundreds of goshawks swooped down in succession towards the cultivators beneath Snow Wind Ridge. However, the barrier outside Snow Wind Ridge did not only defend against the 100,000-strong army at the front, even the skies above Snow Wind Ridge had a dome-like barrier. When the goshawks struck the dome, they merely caused ripples on the barrier and could not break through. On the contrary, the goshawks were dizzy from the collision. Some of the goshawks fell and were drowned by the 100,000-strong army before they could take off, dying on the spot. The cultivators of Snow Wind Ridge were all pale. Some of the cultivators were so close to the 100,000-strong evil wolf army and goshawk gang that their faces turned pale. There was only a single barrier as thin as cicada wings between them. However, that barrier blocked all 100,000 cultivators. Ha 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 ha. Duan Tianliang could not help but burst into laughter and shout, "Everyone, don't panic. This is a trump card left behind by Boss Su to deal with these bandits." Xia Qingying heaved a sigh of relief, as well with a sense of trepidation. After destroying Blood Sun Valley, Su Zimo cultivated while comprehending a formation. It was only after 10 years that Su Zimo managed to set up the formation around Snow Wind Ridge. Thereafter, Su Zimo imparted the formation to Yu Hao and Xia Qingying. However, neither of them had deep attainments in array formations. The two of them had only learned the dermic art to activate the formation when the change in the abyss of the Dragon Abyss star occurred and Su Zimo left. Actually, prior to this, even Yu Hao and Xia Qingying did not know how powerful this formation could be. To think that this formation could defend against an army of 100,000. Of course, it was also lucky that Yu Hao sensed something beforehand and strengthened their defenses, even sending Shen Fei to patrol within a radius of 5 kilometers. If not for Shen Fei's warning, the 100,000-strong army would have arrived in the dark night. Even with this formation, Snow Wind Ridge would have suffered immense losses. At that thought, Xia Qingying was alarmed and ran towards Yu Hao and the others. Yu Hao laid in Shen Fei's embrace. His face was pale and he frowned. There was a huge hole in his abdomen that was still flowing with blood. "Husband, how are you?" When Xia Qingying saw Yu Hao like this, her eyes reddened and tears streamed down her face. "It's fine. I won't die." Yu Hao grinned and forced a smile. The silver giant at the side sprawled on the ground with a menacing wound on his back. His flesh was overturned, and it was a shocking sight. Gu Wenjun was healing the silver giant bit by bit. If not for the silver giant, Yu Hao and the other two would have died. Outside the formation, the 100,000-strong army was in a mess, and many people were injured or dead from the trampling. Song Ye's gaze was dark. Wind Flame was enraged as well and could not help but roar, "Listen to my orders. All of you, stop." That voice drowned out the clamor of the 100,000-strong army. The evil wolf and goshawk cultivators gradually calmed down and began to retreat, regrouping and reorganizing their formations. To think that there would be an immortal formation in Snow Wind Ridge? Songya murmured softly, feeling troubled. Those who were proficient in array formations were extremely rare to begin with. Even some formation grandmasters of the lower worlds would have difficulty coming into contact with the immortal formations of the upper world. Wind Flame declared loudly, "Anyone who is proficient in immortal formations, step forward." A moment later, a skinny old man at the level 3 Black Essence realm stood out hesitantly. "Boss, I know a little about array formations. However, I don't know much about immortal formations, and I don't know if I can dispel it." The skinny old man laughed dryly. "It's fine." Wind Flame waved his hand and said in a deep voice, "As long as you can dispel this formation, I'll reward you handsomely for your contribution today." "All right, I'll do my best." The skinny old man was invigorated. Wind Flame said in a deep voice, "Evil Wolf Army, listen up. Everyone, disperse and surround Snow Wind Ridge. Not an ant is allowed to leave Snow Wind Ridge." Songya nodded slowly as well. "Brothers of the Goshawk Gang, do the same. Once the formation is broken, we'll wash Snow Wind Ridge with blood and kill every single one of them." Kill, kill, kill. Many bandits roared excitedly with ferocious gazes. The 100,000-strong army moved and surrounded Snow Wind Ridge layer by layer before long. Many cultivators of Snow Wind Ridge were alarmed. If the immortal formation was destroyed, they would not even have a way out. Through the barrier, a skinny old man from the evil wolf army began to patrol the surroundings of the formation. From time to time, he squatted down to check and stopped in his tracks, frowning in deep thought. 2 hours. 4 hours. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. Everyone from the evil wolf army was getting impatient. As for everyone from Snow Wind Ridge, they were even more nervous, afraid that the skinny old man would break through the immortal formation. Xia Qingying and Yu Hao had only learned how to activate the formation, but they knew nothing else. Against that, everyone from Snow Wind Ridge could only wait silently. After an entire day, the skinny old man was still sweating profusely as he lingered outside the immortal formation without any activity. The impatience on Windflame and Sangya's faces intensified. Finally, Windflame could not wait any longer and asked slowly, "Can you do it or not? How long will it take to dispel this immortal formation?" "I don't know either." The skinny old man nearly broke out in sweat and said with a trembling voice, "The formation of this immortal formation is truly complicated. I haven't found the formation yet." "In that case, you can't dispel this immortal formation?" Windflame's expression turned cold as he interrupted with a sinister tone. "I definitely can." The skinny old man shuddered in fear and could only grit his teeth and agree. Windflame said expressionlessly, "Give me a deadline." Gulping, the skinny old man probed, "A year?" The moment he said that, he felt his body turn cold. The skinny old man glanced at Windflame only to see the latter's face filled with killing intent. He changed his words hurriedly, "Half a year." "Damn you. Half a year won't do either." Unable to hold it in any longer, Windflame cursed and slashed forward with his saber. The saber beam descended and sliced the skinny old man into two, spilling blood and organs all over the ground. Windflame and Sangya were filled with killing intent. How could they endure for another half a year? Ha 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 ha. Duan Tianliang could not help but burst into laughter and mock. Half a year to dispel an immortal formation? I'm dying of laughter. Don't be smug. Windflame glared at Duan Tianliang, who was laughing, and said coldly, "I'll kill you first after I dispel this immortal formation." Evil Wolf Army, Goshawk Gang, listen up. Attack in shifts day and night. Windflame and Sangya ordered at the same time. Windflame looked at everyone from Snow Wind Ridge with a murderous aura and said sinisterly, "Let's see how long this lousy formation can last." Chapter 1897, Heaven Immortal Mei-ji. Chapter 1897, Heaven Immortal Mei-ji. Black Een Mountain, Meeting Hall. A middle-aged man sat in the middle with a dark expression. He had a mustache that resembled two eyebrows sloping downwards. This was the territorial lord of Black Een Mountain, Ding Yi, a grade 8 Black Immortal. On both sides of the hall sat the commanders of the Black Een Mountain. Almost all of them were grade 7 Black Immortals. On Ding Ye's left and right hands sat two protectors who were grade 8 Black Immortals. When the left protector saw that everyone was present, he stood up and asked with cupped fists, "Territorial Lord, did something happen for you to summon us here today?" Ding Yi waved a talisman between his fingers. "The two great bandits, the Evil Wolf Army and Goshawk Gang, are attacking Snow Wind Ridge. I've just received a distress letter from Snow Wind Ridge. What do you guys think?" The moment the news spread, the hall fell into discussions. After Snow Wind Ridge destroyed Blood Sun Valley, they rose extremely quickly in recent years. To think that they would be targeted by the two great bandits. Snow Wind Ridge's previous reputation was merely because of Su Zimo. Now that he's dead, Snow Wind Ridge isn't worthy of being ranked alongside our major factions. A look of hatred flashed through Ding Ye's eyes when he heard the name Su Zimo. His son, Ding Yu, was killed by Su Zimo on the Dragon Abyss Star. The Right Protector said in a deep voice, "Territorial Lord, there's no need for us to incur the wrath of the two great bandits because of Snow Wind Ridge." "That's right." The Left Protector nodded in agreement. "We don't have any ties with Snow Wind Ridge. There's no need for us to get involved." Ding Yi nodded. "However, we can go watch the show." Left Protector, stay behind to guard. Right Protector, take 500 people with you and follow me to Snow Wind Ridge to take a look. Twin Dragon Sect. Two men stood side by side at the entrance of the hall. Both of them were tall and sturdy with extraordinary auras. The person on the right had messy hair and a sheathed saber on his back with an unruly expression. It was one of the sect masters of Twin Dragon Sect, Ko Yong. The person on the left was handsome with his black hair tied up and draped down his back, hands behind his back. He exuded a calm and aloof aura. This was the other sect master, Su Wan's father, Su Jian. Father, Uncle Ko. Su Wan pursed her lips. Although Su Zimo is dead, you Hao and the others of Snow Wind Ridge have some ties with me. I want to save them. Su Jian remained silent. Su Wan sighed internally. She knew very well that there was no need for Twin Dragon Sect to save Snow Wind Ridge. It was truly unwise. Notwithstanding whether they could save Snow Wind Ridge, if Twin Dragon Sect were to attack, they would definitely offend the two great bandits, the Evil Wolf Army and Goshawk Gang. In the future, there was a high chance that Twin Dragon Sect would be targeted by the two great bandits and would never have peace. Suddenly, Ko Yong turned to look at Su Jian and asked with raised brows, "What do you think?" "My thoughts are the same as yours." Su Jian smiled gently. "Ha." Ko Yong burst into laughter. "In my entire lifetime, you're still the one who knows me best, brother." Su Wan was confused and could not help but ask, "Father, Uncle Ko, have you guys decided?" "Of course." Ko Zhong patted the saber on his back and said in a heroic manner, "Prepare yourself and follow us to meet these bandits." "Father, why are you guys?" Su Wan could not believe it. Su Jian said with a smile, "The four great bandits have massacred the Dragon Abyss Star for many years. However, their whereabouts are unknown and they come and go like the wind. It's difficult to annihilate them. Right now, it's a rare opportunity that the two great bandits are gathered. Even if not for Snow Wind Ridge, we would have gone to fight them." Apart from Black Een Mountain and Twin Dragon Sect, the other 5 major factions received help from Snow Wind Ridge as well. However, apart from Twin Dragon Sect, the other factions did not make much of a move. Dragon Abyss Star, at the end of the abyss. The moment the two great bandits attacked the immortal formation of Snow Wind Ridge, Su Zimo, who was in seclusion in this mysterious space, woke up. Su Zimo left a spirit consciousness imprint on the immortal formation. As long as the immortal formation was activated, he would sense it. Rising, Su Zimo's expression was cold as lightning. Something had happened to Snow Wind Ridge. Before he left, he instructed Yu Hao and Xia Qingying not to activate this immortal formation unless they had no other choice. That was because Essence Spirit Stones were required to activate the immortal formation. Once the Essence Spirit Stones were depleted, the immortal formation would lose its effect. Su Zimo was prepared to rush back immediately. If the immortal formation was operating normally, the energy in the formation eye and Essence Spirit Stones would be enough to last dozens of years. However, if external forces were to attack continuously, the consumption of Essence Spirit Stones would also become extremely intense and might not last long. All these years, Su Zimo had consumed Essence Condensation Pills and cultivated with Essence Spirit Stones, causing his cultivation realm to increase rapidly. If he cultivated normally, even his Green Lotus True Body would take hundreds or even 1,000 years to break through to the level 7 Black Essence realm. However, he had already broken through 3 years ago and cultivated to the level 7 Black Essence realm. As for his Essence Spirit, it was at the terrifying level 9 Black Essence realm. This process took him less than 30 years. Of course, the dozens of Essence Spirit Stones in his storage bag had already been exhausted in the past 30 years. Su Zimo turned to look at the dilapidated palace in the distance before turning to head outside. After passing through a barrier that resembled water, he returned to the abyss once more. Su Zimo looked around and was prepared to use his extreme speed innate divine power to rush to Snow Wind Ridge right away. Suddenly, he frowned and felt that something was amiss. In the abyss, the corpses of various Earth Immortals and Heaven Immortals were strewn everywhere. However, those corpses seemed to have been moved. Although Su Zimo was cultivating in seclusion in the mysterious space, he could sense the activity outside. However, that person managed to hide from his senses. This was an expert that far surpassed him. In fact, up till now, Suzimo's spirit perception had not sensed anything unusual. However, he knew in his heart that there was a high chance this person was nearby. "Come on out," Suzimo said slowly with a grim expression. "Hee hee." A seductive chuckle sounded from behind him, causing one's heart to skip a beat. Suzimo looked back. Not far away, a charming woman blinked her watery eyes and looked at him with a smile. It was the Heaven Immortal expert, Meiji. "Impressive. How did you discover me, young man?" Meiji asked curiously. "You haven't left yet?" Suzimo frowned and asked in an unfriendly tone. To think that Meiji would guard this place for an entire 30 years without leaving. Meiji was not annoyed and chuckled. "After the battle ended, I was indignant and returned. In the end, I realized that a corpse was missing. At that point, she glared at Suzimo with shimmering eyes that seemed to emit a strange demonic power. She said gently, 'That corpse was none other than you.'" Chapter 1898, Vermilion Birds Awakening. Chapter 1898, Vermilion Birds Awakening. Meiji's voice was soft and charming, as though it could awaken the evil desires in the depths of one's heart. Although Suzimo's Dao heart was resolute and unshakable, even he felt that he could not suppress it anymore at that moment. After all, the difference in their cultivation realms was too great. A look of surprise flashed through Meiji's eyes. She had not expected that this puny black immortal would be able to defend against her bewitching voice and not fall into it immediately. Without panicking, Meiji channeled her essence spirit and her eyes shone brightly. This was a visual technique from the immortal art she cultivated. Not many heaven immortals of the same level could defend against it, let alone a black immortal. Suzimo's gaze met with Meiji's. Instantly, he felt a boom in his mind followed by waves of giddiness as his consciousness blurred. His body turned unbearably hot and weak. Not good. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, Suzimo's eyes began to change as well. His left eye turned pitch black without any whites and released a cold aura. His right eye turned white as jade and shone with a blinding light, as though a blazing sun was about to burst forth. The illumination and nether glow visual techniques were released. Under normal circumstances, Suzimo's consciousness had already turned blurry and he had lost control of his body. There was no way he could release his visual techniques. However, his eyes contained two divine stones, illumination and nether glow. The two divine stones were agitated by the outside world and counterattacked on their own, releasing two visual techniques that charged towards Meiji. Initially, Meiji thought that she had Suzimo completely under her control. To think that Suzimo would condense two visual techniques to counterattack, she was caught off guard. Instantly, the visual techniques descended and struck Meiji. The two completely different powers of yin and yang collided within Meiji's body and released an extremely terrifying destructive power. "Ah!" Meiji shrieked tragically and her body swayed, almost falling from midair. However, before long, she channeled her essence chi and purged the power from her body. Suzimo's cultivation realm was limited, and he could not unleash the true power of illumination and nether glow. The counterattack of the visual techniques did not cause much damage to Meiji. At the Heaven Immortal realm, one could be reborn with a drop of blood. For Meiji, that small injury healed in a few breaths. However, Meiji's expression darkened, and she was secretly alarmed. She knew very well that if their cultivation realms were the same, there was a high chance that she would have been destroyed by the yin and yang powers. "Good, very good." Meiji nodded and smiled once more. "You're even more interesting than I imagined. Let's see what other secrets you have." Before her sentence was finished, Meiji's figure swayed, and she arrived before Suzimo in the blink of an eye. She reached out with her fair palm and grabbed Suzimo's glabella. Not only did she want to snatch Suzimo's treasures, she also wanted to use her soul-searching art to search through his memories and uncover all his secrets. Screech! Suddenly, a clear and loud cry sounded from Suzimo's glabella. The voice was extremely similar to a phoenix's cry, but seemed different at the same time. The might and will contained in that voice had far surpassed divine phoenixes. Even the roar of the Taboo dragon phoenix could not compare to it. When she heard that cry, Meiji shuddered and frowned in pain. Immediately after, a scarlet flame burst forth from Suzimo's glabella and charged towards Meiji. Meiji was a genius among heaven immortals and broke free from the cry before long. She regained her senses and retreated. At the same time, she waved her sleeves and essence she gathered wildly, forming a gigantic shield in front of her. Bang! A dull thud sounded when the flames struck the shield. Meiji retreated once more. Suddenly, her gaze landed on the shield in front of her, and her expression changed. At that moment, the shield condensed from heaven and earth essence chi was burning wildly and turned into nothingness in the blink of an eye. In front of Meiji, a gigantic scarlet flame burned. The flames surged into the skies and burned half the firmaments red. The figure of an immortal bird gradually appeared within the flames. Although the immortal bird resembled a phoenix, it did not have the massive body of a phoenix. The immortal bird was more like an immortal peafowl. It was scarlet all over, and its wings were less than 10 feet long when extended. However, its relatively skinny body was filled with a shuddering aura. The immortal peafowl glared at Meiji coldly with a cold gaze that contained endless might. It was as though he was looking at an ant. This was the disregard of an absolute superior. Under the gaze of the immortal peafowl, Meiji averted her gaze instinctively and even had the urge to kowtow. That feeling shocked her. Could that be the sacred beast, the Vermilion bird? Meiji thought of a possibility, and her pupils constricted as she gasped. 30 years ago, a sacred beast, the Azure dragon, disappeared in a flash. Now that a Vermilion bird had descended today, this was definitely not a coincidence. Meiji looked at Suzimo deeply. Be it the Azure dragon or the Vermilion bird, both were related to this lad. Meiji was right. That Vermilion bird was the pattern etched on the second wall of the bronze square tripod in Suzimo's consciousness. The Azure dragon on the first tripod wall had expended too much energy after 2 consecutive battles and fell asleep once more. However, after devouring many spirit treasure shards and the Godfiend soul summoning banner, the Vermilion bird on the second tripod wall had already awakened. Sensing that Suzimo was in danger, the Vermilion bird opened its eyes and charged out of the bronze square tripod. Initially, Meiji wanted to retreat. However, on second thought, Suzimo had way too many treasures on him. This black immortal seemed to have obtained almost all the benefits of this abyss. Furthermore, this person had too many secrets. Where had he been hiding for the past 30 years? What was up with the Azure dragon and Vermilion bird? How did this lad manage to cultivate those visual techniques with 2 different powers, one yin and one yang? If she could suppress this lad, the benefits would be unimaginable. Meiji calmed down quickly and looked at the Vermilion bird in midair not far away. She then looked at Suzimo and smiled charmingly. This Vermilion bird and the Azure dragon from 30 years ago are only in the form of a soul without any flesh. The Godfiends in the soul summoning banner were also souls. It's not surprising that the soul of a sacred beast can suppress them. However, it won't be so easy to deal with me. Just as Suzimo was about to speak, the Vermilion bird in midair seemed to have understood Meiji's words, and 2 flames burst forth from its eyes. The Vermilion bird was enraged. Meiji's words were a provocation for it. Sleeve universe. Meiji did not dare to be careless and channeled her essence spirit, releasing a supreme divine power instantly. She waved her sleeves, and they were dark and deep, as though they had formed a world that contained all living beings. The 2 flames shifted their trajectories and entered the sleeves. Meiji heaved a sigh of relief. However, the next moment, her expression changed and she waved her palm wildly. Her sleeves burned from the inside out and the flames intensified, even starting to scald her fair arm. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.